14th. So Redondo Beach City Council, we are back from closed session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
Councilmember MD. Absent at this time, and Mayor Brand.
Here. Thank you, Eleanor. Mike, do we have any in your mic? Either Mike. Do we have anything to report from closed session?
Yes, you gave unanimous direction to the city attorney to consider appellate review for the case identified under item F4.
The only thing to go forward with appellate review.
Is there a difference between filing and going forward?
Well, considering it makes it sound like it's up to me. So you gave direction to file appellate review along with Orange County COG.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn from closed session.
Motion. Second.
Any objections? Okay, we are adjourned from closed session. Now I'd like to call to order a regular session of the Redondo Beach City Council meeting. Roll call, please.
Member Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
Member MD. Here. Mayor Brand.
Here. Let's all rise and salute the flag and give a moment of silence. I'm particularly thinking about the victims of those horrible tornadoes, Kentucky and elsewhere. Okay, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, folks. We'll go right to announcements. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Just a couple of quick things. We had a great in-person community meeting on Saturday at Alta Vista Community Center at 9:30 in the morning. Had lots of people. We went a little bit long. We had a great discussion, a lot of great questions, concerns answered and heard. We had a great little community meeting last night via Zoom. Apologize, I was not able to get the Zoom connection working to Facebook. They once again changed something, and I spent probably 15, 20 minutes. Mayor Brand, you know how it is.
Every week. I mean, if we would just leave it alone.
I know joke started 10 minutes early, and I couldn't get it going at 10 until 6:40, and I'm like, all right, the heck with it. So anyways, but I have it recorded, so I'll be posting that so everyone can watch. We went over a lot of items. Before I go any further, I wanted to, on a sad note, bring something forward to Redondo, particularly District 1. Those of us District 1, one of the reasons why I got involved was the Legato project. And one of the ways I got involved was Save the Riviera. And one of the founding members of Save the Riviera was Jeff Abrams, and he has passed away this last week. And I wanted to let everyone know I talked to his wife, Jane. We had a great conversation this weekend. She won't be holding any services anytime soon with everything that's going on. But I just wanted to bring it up and thank Jeff for all the years of service for the community, things that he's done. And our hearts are with prayers with Jane, and thank you, Jane, for all the things that you've done so many years through the community, and anything that you need for us or from us. So we're here for you. Also want to give a shout out to the Riviera Village Association. They had a great event a couple weeks ago, free parking in the Riviera Village, and just want to remind everyone that everyone's open down there, and small businesses really need your help, and they don't have shortages down there. There's cool, unique items down there in the Riviera Village, so come on down. Other than that, my next community meeting will be until January 8th, I believe, 8th and 10th, right in there, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
I'm very glad to hear about Jeff Abrams. I had not heard that, so thank you, Nels, for letting me know. Tomorrow night is the first virtual community meeting on Zoom to discuss the public amenities plan down at the waterfront, and the city needs your input. So if you're interested in contributing what you'd like to see in terms of a vision down at the waterfront for things like public boat launch, improvements to the International Boardwalk, Seaside Lagoon, other things down there, we could use your help. So please go to redondo.org. It's on the homepage. You can get information on how you can register for the event. And I hope people will join and provide their input. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, this week's District 3 community meeting is unfortunately going to be canceled just due to some holiday and familial issues that have popped up. So for the first time in all these years, we won't be having a meeting. We'll just move on to January, and January's community meeting, we will have back the Friendship Foundation, and we will revisit the Franklin Park the redo of the old Franklin school site and what Friendship Foundation is planning on doing. And they should be breaking ground sometime in spring. So that'll be our topic in January, and I'll send out the regular monthly newsletter with all that information. And then the only other thing I would mention is that barring, I guess, some crazy legal challenge or something by tomorrow, it looks like Redondo Beach is moving into the second district, the second supervisorial district, come tomorrow night. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Obaji.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank the public works teams on the grounds. They've completed the dog run at Andrews Park, and also they've done great kind of maintenance work at Artesia Boulevard in the right of way. So thank you for that. I'd like to thank our historical commissioners, Dan Comiato and Ron Morocco. They hosted me today at the Redondo Beach Museum, where they're trying to get it in shape in order to do about one tour a week, or at least open it up one day a week. And also planning commissioners Sheila Lamb and Scott Barrett, who have been conducting extensive outreach, this last week regarding items on their agenda. I'm really impressed by all these commissioners from different commissions who are dedicating huge amounts of times to their role and taking their responsibilities very seriously. So it's inspiring. Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember MD.
Last weekend was the King Harbor Boat Parade, and it was great. And they did everything outside to help with COVID. And it was actually, I really enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more having it the way they had it set up. So kudos to King Harbor Yacht Club and their boat parade.
Okay, I have several things I'd like to mention. First, I'd like to thank Public Works. I had a very, very windy day today, and they got out there and they picked up all the palm fronds in Catalina Avenue and Esplanade. And those of you who have seen the mess that's generated with these first big winds knows what a job that is. So thanks for getting out there, and thanks for the stop sign on Redondo. That's kind of like Broadway and Catalina Avenue, Broadway and Torrance Boulevard. It's a game changer for the people over there. It's much, much safer now. And appreciate moving forward quickly on that. And we lost Janice Hahn. Janice Hahn is no longer our county supervisor. It's a big deal. She's been so helpful to us, both with the pallet program and a variety of other things here in Redondo Beach. And we've all had a good working relationship with her. She's always been very responsive and shown up when we needed her to. And I went on many of those hearings for many weeks, trying to keep Redondo Beach in District 4, but to no avail. Because of the census, they did a new redistricting and they moved us into District 2. So our new supervisor is going to be Holly Mitchell, who I've already reached out to, and we'll all have to start developing a relationship with Holly. And she's got some new territories in her district, and the Beach Cities is one of them, as well as El Segundo. And so there's been some changes. And it's important because county has a $35 billion a year budget. And so, and they're only represented by 5 supervisors. It's the largest county in the country with 10 million people. So yeah, our relationship with our county supervisor is extremely, extremely important. And I guess lastly, again, I'd like to give my condolences to the Abrams family. Yeah, I mean, Jeff was quite an activist, and I remember him quite well, and he was always very prepared and giving great input. And so yeah, my condolences go out to his whole family, particularly Jane, who's likewise was very much an activist on Legato, as Councilmember Nierenheim mentioned. So yeah, we should adjourn in Jeff's honor, maybe at the next meeting. We can figure that out if you'd like. So with that, we'll move on to the regular agenda. So I'll go first to the agenda. Is there any changes, or would anybody like to make a motion to approve the order?
If I could, Mayor, we do need to pull under item H15 on the consent calendar. There is a single standalone grant agreement for the property at 2202 Artesia Boulevard. We'd like to withdraw that from the list of recommended grant agreements.
Okay, so again, is there a motion to approve the order of agenda and pull item H15?
So moved. Yes, I'll second that. But do we want to make sure that it's that particular, under H15, that particular item?
Yeah, it's just the one grant agreement among the several there, Mayor.
Right.
Oh,
Specific to an address
okay.
Labeled 2202 Artesia Boulevard.
There you go.
So is that the motion to just remove that one particular item of H15?
And approve the rest of the agenda. Yes.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Nierenheim. We'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, blue folder items. These are items that are added after the agenda is published. Can you read them out for us, Eleanor?
Yes, for L1, the public hearing related to impacts of Senate Bill SB9 by providing regulations related to urban lot splits and 2-unit developments related to the ordinance with attached exhibits. And then N1 is urban lot splits and 2-unit development for the urgent ordinance, and it's the urgent ordinance with attached exhibits. And then also the City of Beverly Hills urgent ordinance. Then N2, prioritize of streets to be improved as part of the deferred maintenance street reconstruction project is the PowerPoint presentation. And then N3, which is scope and direction of staff of possible changes to establish GPAC. And that's the revised GPAC meeting attendance log. And that is it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eleanor. Is there a motion to admit those to the record?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Nierenheim. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, so ordered. Consent calendar. Tonight, we have 15 items on consent calendar. Any member of the council can pull any item for further discussion. Any member of the public can comment on any item. I'll go through the council, see if anybody wants to pull any item first. Councilmember Nierenheim.
I do not need to pull anything. I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
H15, please.
Okay. Councilmember Horvath.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Obaji.
H15.
Okay, that was the one you did, right, Todd?
Yes.
Okay, and then Councilmember MD.
Thank you.
Okay, any members from the public like to comment on any consent calendar item other than item H15?
Okay, Mayor, I have no e-comments for this, for consent, and I don't have any public participation for Zoom also, so none.
Okay, is there a motion to approve consent calendar other than item H15?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, there's some things to read, Eleanor?
Yeah, I have 5 of them. So H6, adopt by 4/5 vote and by title only resolution number CC 2112-120, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, authorizing a 2021-2022 fiscal year budget modification to appropriate $1,019,161 from the wastewater fund to the Basin 2 sewer pump outstation upgrade project job number 50310, and $415,200 from the Tidelands fund to the Harbor Patrol dock replacement project job number 70690, and adopt by title only resolution number CC-2112-121, a resolution City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, awarding a contract to Bellingham Marine Industries, Inc., a California corporation, in the amount of $2,990,267 for the construction of the Basin 2 sewer pump outstation upgrade project and Harbor Patrol dock replacement project, job number 50310 and 70690. H7, adopt by title only, number CC-2112-122, a resolution of City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, authorizing the submittal of the funding request certification to the Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery, Cal Recycle, for payment programs and related authorizations. H8, adopt by title only, ordinance number 0-3223-21, an ordinance of the City Council of the Ordinance of City of Redondo, California, adding Article 8 to Title 5, Chapter 10, adding Section 9-23.5 to Title 9, Chapter 23, and amending Section 10-2.1900 of Title 10, Chapter 2, Article 7 of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code for mandatory organic waste disposal, and making a determination of an exemption under CEQA for second reading and adoption. And now we have, last one is H13, adopt by title only, ordinance number 0-3222-21, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, amending Municipal Code Title 12, Chapter 3 regarding beach hours for second reading and adoption. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. Councilmember Lowenstein, item H15.
Yeah, I wanted to pull this. I'm very happy that we're continuing to do storefront improvement projects on Aviation and Artesia. But I also wanted to point out that there's some other areas of the city that could use some love, especially the International Boardwalk area, PCH. A lot of these places need some love as well too. The International Boardwalk in particular, that's our property. You know, we should be doing what we can to improve that, maybe partnering with the King Harbor Association. But we continue to ignore that area. And I really do think now would be a good time for us to consider going forward a storefront improvement project. Every time I brought it up, it's been kind of looked over. And I think the storefront improvement program has done a lot of great things for Artesia, but it's also important that we look at other areas of the city. So I just wanted to bring this up to everybody's attention, that we look at that. And I think it's very important for the face of our city that other areas also get some love too. So that's it for me.
All right, I guess I'll take the floor.
Sorry about that. You
No worries.
had emergency cat issues. But did you make a motion to pass this?
I didn't, because I wanted the other council members to be able to speak as well.
Go ahead, Councilmember MD.
Just a reminder, the reason why we did this program is because it was found that the reason why we were having trouble with Artesia Boulevard improving is because there was a lot of absentee landlords who weren't willing to upgrade their businesses. And so it was a way to help businesses that are renting to be able to give them an incentive to upgrade a building that is not theirs. And so it's why it was created for that specific area. So while I'm open to other programs to be able to help other parts of the city, that was specifically done because of this problem we saw.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
Yes, I wanted to pull this item because I wanted to see if we could get a brief summary from Ms. Howes or somebody in the city about how the monies are going to be used, and also, since Councilmember MD brought it up, whether you dealt with landlords or tenants in coming up with these agreements?
We can certainly provide a quick visual, I think, for the grant agreements that are proposed tonight, if you'd like. So
Sure. Thank you.
now, or we can let all the council members speak and fire that up. It's up to you, Mayor and Council.
Well, if you're ready to go ahead. Otherwise, it looks like Councilmember Horvath's the other one with a comment.
I just wanted to point out that, per our motion earlier this year, the funds, and maybe Stephen and Elizabeth can speak to this in their presentation, but any additional funds that were left over after this new round would automatically go towards other areas of the city starting November 1st. So if there is any left over, I guess let's hear about that, because to Councilmember Lowenstein's point, it'll be open to anybody else.
Great. Council members, Mr. Mayor, what I'll do is, we do have a presentation that we have queued up. I'm going to just pull that up on my screen right now. Okay. Okay, hopefully you are now able to see this. I will go through, since it's on your consent calendar, I will go through the first few slides rather quickly, because they're largely kind of background information on the history of the program itself, for which most of you are very familiar. There's been 3 rounds of funding, of which the most recent round of funding was $100,000 approved as part of this year's budget cycle. You approved some program guidelines. They were generally the same as previously, with some slight modifications, and opened up the program to applicants on August 15th with a deadlines for submittal of an application of November 1st. Just a reminder, there are 3 tiers of funding that are available. There's a small grant at $2,500, kind of a more significant storefront improvement grant at $10,000. And then if you have a multiple tenant commercial space, you could be granted up to $15,000. These are matching grants, so they're dollar for dollar matching grants. So if you want to get $2,500, the max amount for the mini tier grant, you have to spend $5,000, likewise for the other grant tiers. We do allow some amount of funding, up to $1,000, to be used for architectural and design services for the various improvements. We just like we do every round of funding, we do a fairly significant amount of outreach and to the business community, whether that be mass mailings to business owners and property owners. To get at one of the questions, we do try to reach out to both groups of people. And as Councilwoman MD said, we get a better response from the business owners than we do from the property owners. So that tends to be, our grant program tends to be slanted more toward the business owners than the property owners. If a business owner gets a grant, they do need to have the consent of the property owner. They sign off on the grant agreement, but it's really the business owner who's making the improvement and getting the matching grant to support those improvements. We did outreach through the NRBBA, our city website. We walked the boulevard. There's lots of community outreach that goes on to try to make the businesses aware of the program. We got 7 applications by the deadline. We have an internal review committee that looks at those, and they've crafted they've approved the projects that you're going to see tonight for your consideration. So first project, and I'm going to go through these a little quickly as well. This is some of our projects are, one of the guidelines that we allowed to have happen this year was to have people who previously got a grant be able to reapply for another grant. So this is a project where in one of our previous funding cycles, the entire building was repainted and from some different color schemes to a more subdued earth tone colored program. And now for this particular grant program, one of the tenants within that larger complex is looking to do some improvements to their space. And those improvements are largely driven by signage improvements. So if you look at their space, there are a lot of window signs that are there. You can see some of those in the pictures that are shown here. They have some box signs that exist. And what they'd like to do is upgrade their signage program, scale back on the window signage, redo the box signs, do new vinyl letters, do a new blade sign that would be perpendicular to the building. So really just clean up their entire signage program for this particular space. The next applicant is another applicant who applied for funding in a previous round. They got to do some upgrades to their property, and they're back to do some additional upgrades for their spaces. This round of funding would be to repave their parking lot, repair bollards near some of their outdoor seating areas. You can kind of see that in the middle here where some of their parking areas have been damaged over the years. They're looking to do some replacements there. They're also looking to replace the monument sign, upgrade the monument sign to LED lighting. You see that on the left-hand side. And then clean up some of the trash receptacles and outdoor furniture, modernize those, and you see some examples of what that could look like on the right-hand portion of the slide. 2511 Artesia Boulevard. This is a project to refresh the exterior of the building. And in this instance, it would result in a power wash, repainting the street-facing walls. There's an entry gate that you see on the left that has rusted through and needs some repair work on the hinges, and then refresh the signage, repaint the signage on the front of the building itself. This building falls under our multi-tenant category, so that's that multi-tenant category up to $15,000 that would be available. It's 2 buildings that are on the corner of
Green.
Thank you. And what you see, and I'll try to point these out, this is really the center picture is how it looks today. The picture down here on the far right-hand side is a proposed rendering. And there's several things that would happen here. First is painting and staining both of the storefronts. The second is to repair and extend the trash bin cutout fence. You can see that over on the far lower left. There's kind of a older looking fenced trash enclosure. And when you look at the photo on the far right, you can see there's an upgraded enclosure for that faces out onto the street that will give that a fresher look. Repair and replace the awnings above the Art Finest building. So take this small awning that's there that has their logo on it and do a comparable awning to the bar that's next door. Repair and replace any damaged stucco on the storefront and along the east facing wall, and then do a painting of the stucco itself. So that's a fairly significant improvement for that particular building. This is a grantee who was in a previous round, but never was able to execute their project. So they were approved previously. For various reasons, they weren't able to execute the project. They came back to us and asked to be a participant in this round of funding. So this was a project you may recall having seen before. The intent of this is to smooth out the stucco finishes. You can see it's very rough in the photo that's on the right-hand side, to repaint the building and then install new channel lettering signage on the facade of the building itself. And then the last project that's in the queue for your consideration is probably the most extensive of the renovations. This is a $48,000 exterior upgrade to the building. You can see how it looks today. And here you see what the after look will be for that space. That includes removing and replacing the stucco on the street-facing exterior walls, remove and replacing the windows, remove and replace the awnings. So really a complete refresh of the building. And we don't get many program participants on Aviation Boulevard. A lot of our work tends to be focused on Artesia. So it's nice to have one of the businesses on Aviation Boulevard participating to such a high extent in the storefront renovation program. Oh my goodness. Let me go back here and get my slideshow back live. I apologize. So our recommendation tonight is to approve 6 of the grant agreements. As City Manager Witsansky mentioned, we did pull the one agreement for tonight. So these are the 6 agreements that are before consideration tonight. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The question that I believe you previously asked was, where are we in terms of how much money has been spent on the program? With the improvements that you see there in your administrative report, you can see that the funding request is for $54,821 with the exclusion of 2202 Artesia Boulevard. That brings it down about $2,000. So the funding request for these grant applications would be approximately $52,800, leaving you just shy of $48,000 available for storefront improvement programming. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have. If I've missed anything, and Elizabeth, you feel the need to supplement what I've already said, please feel free to jump in and add on.
Well, okay, that was great. Thank you, Stephen. Elizabeth, did you have anything?
Yeah, that of the 6 applicants, 5 of them are property owners. So that was very encouraging as well.
Great. Good to see you. Councilmember Obaji.
All right. Well, I just want to thank you, Elizabeth, and Director Proud for your hard work. That's no small feat to get that many property owners subscribed in the program, and that extensive of improvements to the property. Actually, I regret that I had to inconvenience you to pull this item and present on it, but I'm also proud to show you all off and your hard work. So thank you for doing that. What I'd like to do is consider making a motion to designate, to obviously approve this. I'd like to make a motion to approve these grants, as well as designate the remaining $48,000 to the International Boardwalk for street storefront improvement. Now, I realize that our prior motion designated it for anywhere in the city, but maybe we should, so that we capture those tenants that are ours, we capture their attention, we get them going on it, we designate it to the International Boardwalk, and then we expand this to other parts of the city and some other appropriation. But otherwise, 48,000 spread across the whole city isn't necessarily going to do much. It's also not going to focus staff on that particular area. That's my 2 cents. But
I think Mike came on because he's going to tell you this is a modification.
It's not agendized for that. It's agendized for approving these grants. It certainly that can be a referral for another item.
Got it. Thank you for that. So just a motion to approve these grants. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Elizabeth. I mean, this is fantastic. I guess this is our second round of doing this.
It's actually our third round, Mr. Mayor. And
that's why I asked. So there you go.
Yeah, third round of funding, and truly Elizabeth deserves all the credit. I give the presentation, but she does 100% of the work. So let that not get lost. There's no doubt about it that without her, you would not have this level of participation.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I mean, it's what we're supposed to be doing, right? As a city, is helping our businesses upgrade and thrive. And it's fantastic. And, you know, is the application period still open? I mean, I would imagine some other businesses on Artesia and Aviation would probably be trying to get their applications in.
We've tried to be flexible with the application period. I don't know, Elizabeth, if there's anybody who's still, working to try to get their application across the finish line.
There's 2 that have become non-responsive. So at this point, no, there's nobody actively working on completing their application.
Are they non-responsive because they think they passed the deadline, or are they non-responsive because?
No, I mean, we gave them time. We gave them time after November 1st to complete certain items in their application. And at some point they just stopped answering their phones and responding to email. So I think they're just have other things on their plates or just aren't interested in pursuing it anymore.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for pursuing them to that level.
Tried.
Yeah. Great news, Joe. Thanks for pulling it.
Mayor, just for the record, we have no e-comments or any Zoom participants for this item.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second, although Councilmember Nierenheim and Councilmember Horvath have their hands up. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Yeah, real quick, Stephen and Elizabeth. I mean, this program is great. Fully support to the extent that what we've done it, but I also want to make sure do we have any real payoffs? Do we know our return on investments? Do we know, sales tax data? Do we know other investments that have come along the way? Do we know, we spent 200 grand so far. Are we going to get, 100 grand it back? Or is there other people doing something to move this ball forward? What are our indicators that this is actually doing something good?
Yeah, I think we've had this question in the past about how we measure the return on the investment. And it's very difficult to kind of quantify the result for some of these things because not all of the program participants, for example, are sales generators, right? So, some of them may be office spaces, dental offices, professional services. So, the real goal, as we've discussed previously, is to really try to upgrade the image of Artesia Boulevard and make it a more attractive business location. And it's almost the old adage, success breeds success. So as we clean it up and we create a more attractive business location, you can attract better quality tenants, and presumably you're starting to see an increase in overall economic value in that location. But to try to pin down individual specific economic indicators that you could say, well, we invested $200,000 and we saw a net increase in general fund proceeds of X. We don't have the ability to really measure that quantifiably. So it's more of a, think about it more of as a street beautification project. It's really try to improve the image, the business climate, the pedestrian experience, just the overall quality of someone who's doing business or visiting Artesia Boulevard.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had fully supported this in the beginning, getting it going, and yeah, we need to move this over to other parts of the city, but I want to be really careful on public funds everywhere else in the city. We specifically targeted Artesia Boulevard because of some of the way the businesses looked, right? So we just don't want to just be doing this everywhere in the city just because the money is extremely limited, resource limited. We want to be able to get to target certain areas. So that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Obaji.
I just want to respond to that real quick. Councilmember Ehrenheim, you saw that there was a property owner that was investing $40,000 into their storefront improvement in consideration of the city adding 10,000 of those dollars. So right there, 10,000 is begetting 30,000. A lot of these properties are right next to residential areas on Artesia Boulevard. If the view line all of a sudden while entering a street that's perpendicular to Artesia Boulevard becomes less blighted and more attractive, the real property values in the surrounding areas end up going up. We've seen a huge climb in our real property tax and transfer taxes. So it's not directly measurable, but surely it's measurable from an ethos standpoint. And also the opposite is true, which is broken windows breeds crime, breeds this belief that that people have abandoned the area and the good guys are not in charge. So I would say that to the extent there are areas in our city that are lacking in economic activity and have prominence and blight, that this is a program that is worth proliferating.
Broken windows, a line from Malcolm Gladwell. Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, and to that effect, you were talking about return on investment. If we would do a storefront improvement on the International Boardwalk, being that we're the landlord and we participate in the percentage of sales rent, you could easily calculate that we would do better financially if we were able to improve the storefronts down on the International Boardwalk because we're the landlord. So I think if you're looking for return on investment, that's a good place to start with. Places that we own and that we participate in the rent. So that's it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's just an entirely different economic model because we're really investing in our own properties there, and that directly translates to a return to us if that results in increased sales.
Real quick, Todd, I'll be holding you that and another discussion that we can't talk about right now.
Okay.
It's good though.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yes.
I know the business owners down there would greatly appreciate it.
And I think what we'll do, Mayor, on that, because obviously it's not part of our conversation tonight, but the appropriate place for us to talk about a program like that and the redirecting of funds would be as part of mid-year when we do our mid-year budget review. And I would think that part of that conversation will also include a target of the program because we are the landlord there. We own the outer structure of those spaces, particularly on International Boardwalk. So we're going to need to partner in a different way down there than we do simply in this program where we provide seed money to encourage private investment. So it'll need to take on a different tone, and the right place and time for us to have that conversation, I think, will be as part of the mid-year budget review.
Okay. Is that what you're going to say, Mike? This isn't the time to take this on?
I wonder what it'd be like if you did talk about it, because when you're not talking about it. So anyways.
Yeah, I think the public's like, why can't we just talk about whatever we want to talk about? Okay, folks, we have to agendize things and we have to stick to the agenda. It's part of state law. We have to say what we're going to talk about. We don't get to go talk about whatever we want to talk about. That way everybody knows what we're going to talk about and they're here and prepared. So anyway, with that, there's a motion on the floor in a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji. And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, there we go. You don't need to read anything, do you, Eleanor?
No, not for this item.
Okay. Next up is public participation on non-agenda items. So this is the opportunity for the public to talk about whatever they'd like to talk about. We can't talk about it because we didn't agendize it, but the public can talk about whatever they'd like to talk about under this item, as long as it's not on the agenda already. You have 3 minutes and yeah, we'll throw it open. Eleanor, do we have anybody who'd like to speak under non-agenda items?
Let's see, we have no e-comments and I don't see any hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and just, there we go. Okay. So Holly Osborne. There you go, Holly.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and planning staff. I want to comment on another Redondo Beach resident's non-agenda item from last time on December 7th. He cited an LA Times editorial and other articles on SB housing bill and quoted a poll showing supposed LA County support for SB9. Unfortunately, the articles had several mistakes and the poll had a misleading question. This was all due to repeated inaccuracy by the LA Times principal reporter on housing. Recall, SB9 is the bill that would allow a developer to split a lot and have up to 2 lots on each split for a total of 4 units. The units on a single split lot cannot convey separately. For this reason, the 2 units on a split are often referred to as a duplex, but the word duplex does not appear anywhere in SB9. Recall also that Senator Atkins, the chief author of the bill, has repeatedly and emphatically said during debates on the Senate floor that the total units after the splitting and building is 4, and 4 means 4, end quote. I sound like a broken record saying 4 means 4, end quote. This includes all dwelling types, including existing ADUs and JADUs. Since the reporter from the LA Times and the LA Times itself have taken up particularly uninformed positions on this issue, I feel it's my duty to report it. And here are 3 examples of questionable reporting. First, in the November 30th issue of the LA Times, the subheading refers to, quote, SB9, which allows duplexes on single family lots, end quote. The text itself says SB9 must allow duplexes and in some cases 4 units in most single family home neighborhoods, end quote. Both of these statements are a deliberate minimization of the bill. They imply that the effect of SB9 will largely result in 2 units per current lot where there is now only 1. No. Unfortunately, the bill will allow 4 units after splitting in the original lot. This is very hard on cities with small lots like Redondo. 2. In the December 2nd issue of the LA Times, the reporter says SB9 lets property owners construct duplexes and in some cases 4plexes, end quote, in most single-family neighborhoods. This introduces a new error. The term 4plex implies a large building of 4 units on 1 lot. According to housing experts that I have contacted in Sacramento, SB9 does not force a city to allow more than 2 units on a split. And according to the authors, 4 is the maximum for both lots. Recall, 4 means 4. 3, the particular poll that LA Times ran on December 5th, in which they said 55% of the voters support SB9, asked a very misleading question. This nullifies their poll results. Here was the question. SB9 would offer homeowners new...
Time.
Can I extend?
Is there a motion to extend?
Motion to extend.
Thank you.
Okay, no objections. Go ahead, Holly.
Okay, here was the question, quote, SB9 would offer homeowners new options to build up to 4 additional units on their lots by adding granny units or by converting their home to a duplex, triplex, or 4plex. Do you support or oppose this new law? I'm going to skip part of my comment in the interest of time. The most serious misrepresentation in the poll is a statement that it asks about an owner converting his home to a duplex, triplex, or fourplex. The misrepresentation is with the use of the word convert. This implies that a homeowner has a large home that already fits nicely on the lot and a bathroom here and a microwave there, you can get more units and not change the footprint. Thus, the resulting structure will still blend in with the neighborhood and will be viewed more favorably than if additional units had been crammed on the lot. A more accurate question should have been for the poll is, quote, SB9 allows a developer to buy the lot next door to you, split the lot, and put up 2 units on each lot for a total of 4 units. Do you support or oppose that measure, end quote. I suspect that the LA Times would have gotten much different results if they had asked the question more accurately. That's the one I asked when I asked people to sign the petition. And one last point, this is the last one, but it's the most important. The speaker last time disparaged our city council and planning staff for trying to come up with regulations to clarify the bill, as many other cities are doing. I submit that because there is so much confusion about SB9 and it is so sloppily written that a city would be derelict in its duty if it did not come up with clarifying conditions. So thank you, Planning Commission and city staff. I'll have more comments later, and I'm going to mail this to all of you, and I hope you receive and file it. Thank you for the extended time.
Hey, thank you for your work, Holly. All right, who's up next?
Next is Wayne Craig.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Wayne Craig, President of District 1. The City of Redondo Beach has begun a planning effort to improve and enhance various public amenities within the city's waterfront. With improved amenities, our shoreline facilities will provide more resources for both residents and visitors alike. After fighting for 6 years to have a say in the future of King Harbor, now is our chance. Thanks to the voters in March of 2021, the City Council majority has finally shifted toward being resident-centric. That means your voices will be heard and listened to. Come be a part of it at long last. Now, this time around, we are focusing on amenities first, instead of letting a mall developer cram in a massive financial failure of a mall and shoehorn in amenities around it. The city is working to cite key features and improvements to include the location of the boat ramp, a requirement of the California Coastal Commission. Where should we put the sport fishing pier? Options to improve Seaside Lagoon and actually expand its operations, and also improvements to the International Boardwalk. Now, right after the 2017 election, Rescue Waterfront held several community meetings and presented these suggestions from the public to the Redondo Beach City Council. Unfortunately, at that time, a majority of council members favored stagnation and continuing to work with litigious mall developer CenterCal. Even after the majority of Redondo Beach residents vehemently rejected that terrible plan. Now, since March of 2021, the election, that old city council dynamic has changed. Now we can determine the future of King Harbor and not be shut out by special moneyed interest or a council beholden to the old guard regime. Thanks again to the voters who successfully changed that decades-old pro-developer dynamic. It's our time now. Please participate in this hard-won victory for the future of King Harbor tomorrow night on Wednesday, December 15th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. If you want to learn more, please go to Rescue Our Waterfront at rescueourwaterfront.org. Thank you again for your time and have a good evening.
Okay, anybody else? Eleanor?
That concludes our public participation.
Okay, thank you. So next up is item N1. And tonight, N1 is a public hearing for introduction and first reading of ordinances amending Title 10, Chapter 1, and Title 10, Chapter 2, Zoning and Land Use, Title 10, Chapter 5, Coastal Land Use Plan, implementing ordinance of the Redondo Beach Municipal Code to mitigate the impacts of Senate Bill 9 by providing regulations related to urban lot splits in 2-unit developments. I will point out these are not violations of SB9, how we get around SB9, which, as one of the commenters said under non-agenda items, LA Times was implying that all these cities are going around trying to getting around SB9. No, we're implementing the ordinance and the regulations that we're allowed to. So anyway, with that, I guess, Brandy, you'll be...
Mayor, we need to do ex parte communication for...
Oh,
thank you.
Okay, yes, this is a public hearing. Excuse me. Councilmember Narenheim, do you have any ex parte communication about
I
this?
talked to the public, the staff, and I don't believe I talked to any council members on this.
Talk to me.
Talk to you. You're the mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Talk to the public about this. Thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
Public and staff in recent months.
Councilmember Obaji.
I've talked to the mayor about SB9 and the public, but that's about it.
And Councilmember MG.
Public and staff.
I talked to public staff, a couple of council members, Councilmember Narenheim and Lowenstein, and I believe Obaji, and then, many people across the state. So, lots of people about SB9. So, anyway, with that, I guess we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion to open a public hearing for item L1.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Narenheim, seconded by Councilmember Obaji. Any objections? Okay, the public hearing is open. Community Development Director, Brandy Forbes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to share my screen and go through a presentation. And the presentation is on L1, the public hearing, but it also pertains to item N1, which is a corresponding item. So it'll cover both. It'll be so we're not duplicating the presentation. Let me pull that up. And can you see that okay?
Yeah, looks good, Brandy.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So this presentation, like I mentioned, will cover the related items of L1 and N1. N1 is the urgency ordinance to mitigate the impacts of Bill 9 or SB9 pertaining to urban lot splits and 2-unit developments. L1 is the public hearing and introduction of the permanent ordinances of the same. And the purpose of the urgency ordinance is for Redondo Beach to quickly address the inadequacies of SB9 by adopting objective standards prior to the January 1st, 2022 effective date of SB9. And this is an interim measure while the ordinances under L1 the urgency ordinance is an interim measure where L1 ordinances under the public hearing would need to continue through the required process, including planning commission review and city council adoption. Just really quickly, I know we've gone over a lot of information on November 16th when we discussed this, but I just wanted to provide the refresher as part of the record. SB9 was signed into law this past September. It becomes effective January 1st, 2022. The changes are under 3 California government code sections relating to land use, and those are listed in the bill itself. SB9 will require cities, including charter cities, to provide for the ministerial approval of a housing development in a single-family residential zone that could split the lot, add a second primary home to the lot, or both. And why we have the ordinances on tonight is that SB9 does allow cities to implement some controls and objective standards. And Redondo Beach City Council determined at the November 16th meeting to move forward to implement these types of standards before SB9 becomes effective. There are 2 components to the law. The first is urban lot splits. And then the second is 2-unit development. So there are 2 different portions of our code that would need to be amended. And the urban lot splits is under the Title 10, Chapter 1 subdivisions portion of the code. And I'm just going to go through what's in the ordinance. I apologize that that you didn't get the exhibits as part of the agenda packet. We realized that there was a glitch with our agenda system that it didn't get out to you. So we got those to you in the blue folder this afternoon. So that's why I want to make sure that we just walk through what's in the ordinance. The ordinance the ordinances allow only an individual property owner to apply for an urban lot split, not corporations or corporate persons. And just to clarify, Individual property owner means a natural person holding fee title individually or jointly in the person's own name, or a beneficiary of a trust that holds fee title. It does not include any corporation or corporate person of any kind, such as a partnership, LP, LLC, C Corp, or S Corp, except for a community land trust. So just so you have an idea of, that it's really trying to work on, the individual property owner. So it's not just becoming a corporate operation. The ordinances clarify that it is only single family residential, which are the R1 and R1A zones. The ordinances reiterate limits for sites with certain circumstances as established by SB9. And we went over those at our last discussion. But this includes like wetlands, hazardous waste sites, flood hazard areas, and not anything that we just define. It has, it is defined on what qualifies those. The lot splits will be prohibited on historic property or within a historic district. The ordinances specify that any lot being split cannot have been previously split, and it may not be adjacent to a parcel that has been split by the same owner or person acting in concert with the same owner. The ordinances reiterate the protected housing limits of SB9, where demolition or alteration is prohibited of housing that is income restricted or subject to rent control or occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years. The regulations will limit the lot size to what is allowed by SB9, where the lot being split must be at least 2,400 square feet. The resulting lots must each be at least 1,200 square feet, and each of the resulting lots must be approximately equal between 60% and 40%. And that's of the original lot area. And that's per SB9. There is a requirement for easements with public service providers for each resulting lot, so that they're not just connecting the utilities across from one lot to the other. There's a mandate that each resulting lot must adjoin the public right-of-way with a minimum frontage of at least 20 feet to ensure a viable width of the home to be built. The ordinances limit separate conveyance of dwelling units on the same lot. Basically, it can't be condominium, so it's not truly, an R2, R3, but it ends up being the same effectiveness as far as the number of people living on a lot.
Could you just explain that one again, Brandy? I didn't.
Yeah, so units on a lot can't be separately conveyed versus like on R2 or R3, those can be condos and each owned by somebody separately. So we are limiting it so that it cannot be separate conveyance of the dwelling units.
You mean all 4 units?
No, on each lot. So the 2 units on a lot, they cannot be of separate conveyance. So if it's a lot split, then on each lot there's going to be 2 units. Those cannot be conveyed separately, but the 2 different lots can have different ownership. But if it's a single lot and they don't do the lot split, and they build the 2 main units, an ADU and a JADU, they would not be able to convey any of those separately. Yeah, sure. The deed restrictions are required. So it's only a residential use, that there are no short-term rentals, and it prohibits that separate conveyance. There is a requirement for an affidavit of owner occupancy. And we're acknowledging in the ordinances that the coastal regulations do apply in full. The only exception is that we cannot require a public hearing per SB9.
Wait, before you go, this is the original one? No, go back to the other side.
Oh, sorry.
So an individual, this is just only an individual property owner can apply, not corporations or corporate persons. Those are in our ordinances that we're putting in there. This is not part of SB9. So SB9, a corporation or corporate persons can can do that.
I do believe so, yeah.
Okay,
So put this in here.
So just to be clear, so a developer can't buy a property and then split the lot.
They could if they're buying it as an individual, but they couldn't buy it as an LLC or an LP or other corporation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And that's because of our ordinance.
Because of what we're putting in the ordinance, correct?
And SB9 allows it.
Mm-hmm.
What, do we have to do that by January 1st or just we need to do it by January 1st? Because if we don't, then they could start doing that January 2nd.
They could start doing it January 1st, right?
Okay, thank you.
Could they transfer, Brandy, just sorry to speak out of order, but could they transfer once they've split a lot as an individual, transfer it into an LLC entity, you know, like the way people create trusts and stuff like that?
After they've split the lot, let's go on to the next because we're also limiting it in, they'd have to wait until after they split the lot and they did the 2 unit developments because we're also having that same requirement under the 2 unit development. So once they've split the lot and now they can develop 2 units on each of those lots, we're also saying that, you know, so they couldn't just sell it off as, you know, like I'm going to own this one and I'm going to have my development company do this one or some other developer do it. It's still going to have to be an individual property owner per our definition.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And I'll go ahead and start on this slide since we're there. As I mentioned, similar to the urban lot split, would allow only an individual property owner to apply, as I gave the definition before. Require that the lot on which the 2 unit project is proposed must have been legally subdivided. Again, similar to the urban lot split, for 2 unit developments on those sensitive sites like wetlands and hazardous waste sites. The ordinances prohibit 2 unit projects on historic properties or within a historic district. And also similar to the urban lot split regulations, demolition or alteration is prohibited of housing that is income restricted or subject to rent control or occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years. The ordinances specify that no more than 2 dwelling units of any kind may be built on a lot resulting from an urban lot split. And although the regulations allow municipalities to do this with the intent, as Holly mentioned, of 4 means 4, we have experienced through the ADU regulations that even though something may be allowed, that the municipality may be allowed to do something, that they can only do it once they've adopted it in their own ordinance. So it's saying, yes, you can do this, municipality, but you need to adopt an ordinance saying that that's what you're doing. And so we want to make sure that that's in this ordinance because we've had that experience with ADU. So even, you know, so we make sure that 4 means 4, and we're putting it in our own ordinance. Let's see. And then the ordinances, they specify that the project is not on an urban lot split. If it's not on an urban lot split, that the project is limited to the 2 units plus what's allowed with an ADU or JADU. So it's still, if they're not splitting it, they can have 4 units on that lot, that same lot. Again, ensuring that 4 means 4. Demolition is limited to only 25% if the site has been occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years. So I know at the last meeting I had understood it as just that you can limit the demolition to only 25%. Apparently, it's only if the site has if it has not been occupied. I'm sorry, I don't know if I have that written right, but if the site has not been occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years, then you can limit demo, or if it has been occupied, has been occupied in the last 3 years, you can limit the demolition to 25%. And so this is like a confusing point, but I wanted to make sure that we put what it was in per SB9 in the regulation here. They have a lot of double negatives in that section, so it's a really unclear, it's hard to kind of wrap your brain around what it is that they're trying to get at with that particular 25%. The ordinances require that lot coverage, outdoor living space, and the setbacks are to be followed to the extent feasible, so that 2 primary dwelling units on the lot at 800 square feet each are permitted. We have to allow 800 square foot dwelling units on a lot per this regulation. So if there's a standard that we have that would limit that or prohibit that, we have to ease that standard. However, this doesn't mean that we have to waive it completely. So for example, if to get those 2 units at 800 square feet, they may have to reduce the amount of outdoor living space that they provide. It doesn't mean that they can ignore that rule at all. It just means that they have to, they're still going to have to provide as much as they possibly can. It's just going to be at a reduced amount. We added a requirement of a new tree for each new unit, or a fee in lieu if it isn't feasible, so that we can plant, if it isn't feasible to plant the tree on the lot, then we can, as a city, plant a tree elsewhere. And then similarly, tree replacement required for removal of mature trees. And we have that defined and a requirement in our landscape ordinance, and it mentions trunk diameter of 6 inches or greater. And then again, if tree replacement or a fee in lieu, if for them to provide those 2 800 square feet units, they're not able to replace a tree on the site. And we added these tree requirements because this level of density, there's definitely going to be a decreased pervious area on the lot and increased heat island effect. So having this requirement at least addresses the environmental sustainability concerns, whether the trees are planted on the site or the city plants the trees with the use of the in lieu fee elsewhere in the community. At least we're requiring a tree provision.
How much is the in lieu fee?
It'll be what the cost is for at the time. So we'll have to get what that value is and the cost of labor and use of equipment to do that. So we will charge that at the, have that estimate at that time. And it'll be based, so we don't want to say, whatever the tree was valued at, 5 years ago, because that's what we put in. It's going to be based on the value of installing that tree. Okay. And then just continuing on regarding the 2-unit development regulations, the ordinances limit the floor area of the second primary unit to 800 square feet. This was suggested at the city council meeting at our last discussion. And as well, the ordinances limit the height of the second primary unit to 16 feet or 1 story. And this is pretty much in line with what the ADU regulations have. The parking requirement will be what is allowed by SB9. It's not a lot, but it's 1 off-street parking space per unit, unless the lot is located within a half-mile walking distance of either a high-quality transit corridor, as defined by the Public Resources Code, or a major transit stop, as defined by the Public Resources Code. And we've explored that before. That's that less than 15 minutes frequency of a bus route. And as well, the parking cannot be required if there's a car share vehicle located within 1 block of the parcel. The ordinances mandate that each primary dwelling unit on a lot must have its own direct utility connections. The ordinances require all structures must comply with all current local building standards. They specify that the impact fees for an additional primary dwelling unit will be charged and proportional for ADUs and JADUs as allowed by the state regulations. The state regulations on ADUs it's a proportional amount. The ordinances require that all other applicable standards apply to the extent that they do not conflict with state law, including applicable requirements for affordable housing. And this will be the case when our inclusionary housing ordinance is adopted. Now, that said, what you may have seen in your blue folder item was Beverly Hills. They have their urgency ordinance. They did have a more direct affordable housing requirement that you may want to consider adding to the urgency ordinance. And we still have, next week's meeting. If you did want to add that, we could continue that item with making any changes that you might, want to do after our discussion tonight. And then the ordinances limit separate conveyance of the dwelling units on the same lot, no condominiums, similar to the lot splits. Specify that only residential use, no short-term rentals, and the affidavit of owner occupancy is provided if there's an urban lot split. And again, the coastal regulations apply in the full coastal zone, except for any requirement for a hearing. And then this slide is just talking about that companion urgency ordinance. That goes into, I just wanted to clarify that there is a dual course here. We have the urgency ordinance, and then we'll need to adopt at some point the permanent ordinances. SB9 goes into effect January 1st. The local laws, the law allows local agencies to adopt objective standards to govern these types of projects. SB9 was passed without serious study or consideration of the potential impact related to traffic, greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, and other environmental factors. It was passed without consideration of many efforts the city of Redondo Beach or any cities have taken to address housing affordability. And the urgency ordinances serve as an interim measure for Redondo Beach to adopt objective standards prior to January 1st, the effective date of the regulations, in order to help address some of these inadequacies of SB9. So again, the urgency ordinance is agenda item N1 for consideration, while the ordinance is under L1 would continue through the its own legal process. So for the recommendation, there's been a lot that's happened in the last couple of weeks with so many different municipalities. Looking at what they can immediately adopt, and there's a lot of questions on what do these ordinances even allow or not allow. The typical procedures would be here: we've opened the public hearing, take testimony, close the public hearing, and deliberate, and then introduce the two ordinances. However, given the complexities, the various deliberations, and things that we may want to think about or consider as more information develops on SB9, you may want to instead consider holding off, just close the public hearing, don't introduce these, maybe send that to the Planning Commission for their recommendations on that, but rather instead adopting that urgency ordinance tonight, or making revisions and adopting the urgency ordinance next week. Maybe if you want to add affordable housing, and then forward that discussion to address SB9 to the Planning Commission for them to weigh in on a lot of these uncertainties, complexities, and we can bring that to the Planning Commission at their January meeting, and they can provide their recommendations for a final ordinance to the City Council. So that's just something, we wanted to give you that option. So you might want to take more time to get it right on the permanent ordinances, but get that urgency ordinance underway. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, that's great, Brandy. Thank you for that thorough presentation. It's a very complicated issue. If anybody can see, the state's tinkering with the zoning and building standards and everything else from Sacramento, and they have no business doing this. They have no idea what they're really doing. And yeah, it's pretty pathetic, frankly, what the legislature thinks they're accomplishing, but they're smarter than everybody. They're very arrogant, frankly, when it comes to this. Let me read Section 4 of SB9. The legislature finds and declares that ensuring access to affordable housing is a matter of statewide concern, not a municipal affair. Is there any affordable housing requirements in any of those upzonings?
They do not have anything requiring or addressing affordable housing in the SB9, the actual regulations that are going into the codes.
So that's in direct conflict with the whole purpose of this bill, which goes to my earlier statement about them not knowing what they're doing. Could they have put affordable requirements? Could they have said, hey, if you split the lot, then one of them's got to be affordable of some degree?
I would imagine that they could. I mean, they're the ones that are setting these regulations.
Yeah, they're the brainiacs. Yeah. Right? They're the ones who know everything. Please. So anyway, back to your process, Brandy. You were saying that we could. Let me see if I got this right. So we could adopt the urgency ordinance, which we're probably going to do. We could ask for amendments, whatever, go through all that, take public comment, suggest amendments, and you could come back in a week with our urgency ordinance. And then we could make other comments and send it off to the Planning Commission for them to what would be the normal process to hear certain changes to our municipal code related to zoning, where these are urgency or nature, or what am I trying to say? Urgency of an urgency nature, because if we don't do it, then somebody could come in January 1st and do things that SB9 allows us to prevent.
Right. And you know, the concern is that we don't, because they didn't study or consider the potential impacts related to traffic or greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, that kind of thing. We want to make sure that we're putting some key things in place here, objective, and per what they're requiring, and it has to be objective standards. But we're looking to put those objective standards in place now. And it gives us that opportunity then to evaluate ourselves, like what are going to be some of the impacts, and are there additional things that we may want to consider? For example, since our last discussion, the option for having a tree requirement was something that, we already know that this added density is going to really have an impact on the amount of impervious, or it's going to have more impervious coverage on each property that ends up developing this way. So, there may be additional things that maybe the planning commissioners would recognize or think about that we haven't, because we've had such a short window to even try and pull together some of those regulations for that permanent ordinance. But we know already that these are the key things that we absolutely need to have in place. We need to have the fees for and get that in place. We want to have some objective standards. So it's not just, to do 2 800 square feet units, we're not able to comply with this regulation. Well, we're going to say you're going to have to comply as much as feasible. So it's not just an all or nothing. So there are different things that we're putting in there now that we already know, but there may be some things that we haven't thought about that the Planning Commission may have additional regulations.
Well, let's talk about an affordability requirement. Does that seem like something that should be in the urgency ordinance? It seems like it.
I think, that's here's an example, right? We just received the Beverly Hills urgency ordinance, and they have that in there. It's something, I know we've kind of talked on the idea, but and I'll leave it to the, city attorney's office as far as, can we add that? I think that, that seems like a feasible option for that urgency ordinance.
Did you want to comment on that, Mike, about how we might be able to implement some sort of affordability requirement, or just not sure yet?
Yeah, just not sure yet. We would need the time to look at it. If the Beverly Hills one is written that it sets the rental rate, but doesn't say they have to be a qualified person the way, an affordable inclusionary zoning ordinance typically does. And there is a concern from other cities that the state has a right to conduct studies and look at any affordable ordinance that affects more than 15%. And in this case, it would potentially affect 50%. And so, do you set it at if 10% of the property and make them round up. So I just don't know. And as Brandy was saying, the reason we put them when the council first gave the direction, both the urgency and the normal ordinance, was there is some concern in every urgency ordinance that a court may say, this really isn't urgent, and then you won't have anything in effect, until 30 days after a normal ordinance goes through the process. In this case, I don't put the risk of that as high. And I think the bigger risk, as Ms. Forbes says, is that we don't know everything that needs to be in there. And some planning commissions, apparently the Hermosa Beach Planning Commission didn't give direction to go through with it. I think their council is going to obviously have the final word, but I think it would be better to get input from the Planning Commission. It would be better to take our time on the permanent ordinance, and we would prefer a week's continuous of N1 so we can let you know whether we think it is, if we get sued, whether or not we're setting ourselves up for potential liability if we add it in there, or how we add it, how would best to be to add it in there.
You're talking about the affordability component.
The affordability, correct.
Yeah. Well, again, Section 4 says the legislature finds and declares that ensuring access to affordable housing is a matter of statewide concern. So, that's the whole purpose of this. I just, it's like I'd much rather be on the more err on the side that, they need affordable is what they're saying the point of this is. So, let them come and say we shouldn't be allowing affordable. You know what I'm saying?
I don't disagree with that at all. And that will be a big part of our lawsuit. But then there are other sections of law that says HCD, you have to have studies and they get involved if it's going to affect more than 15%. And by definition, this is, if you make it, 1 unit out of 2 or 1 unit out of 4, it's going to make it more than 15%. And so I just want to make certain that we're on the best legal foot that we can be. But I absolutely agree with you from a general philosophical point of view.
Hey, Brandy, we had done some preliminary math a few months ago. We were looking at average lot sizes in Redondo Beach and R1 neighborhoods where these lot splits would occur. And basically it's a big upzoning going from 1 on a lot to 4 on a lot. And then we're starting to look at lot sizes and then, a density. Units per acre. And then HCD was saying that if you got to 30 units per acre, we could consider that as part of our RENA allocation. Have you looked any further into?
Yeah, the only concern I have about that is there's a couple parts, there are multiple parts to that, right? One was if you're a certain density, that 30 dwelling units per acre, but that your lot size is at least a half acre or greater. So we're not going to have consolidation of lots. So
I see.
And that doesn't mean that they, they may, because this is a new rule, that they may say, oh, you know what, we're actually in the areas where this is feasible, we'll allow whatever, to count towards your arena. But the problem is the second that you get to, having some of these developed and they don't have an affordable component to it, now you're eating into your buffer of your arena for the affordable unit.
Okay. All right. Well, I know everybody's got a lot of questions. I would just wrap it up with, this is SB9, just one bill that's state legislature sending down to cities with no requirements for CEQA, no requirements for proper planning like we normally do. And they're just taking the lid off for big developers to come in, and they'll figure out a way around LLC. An individual could go buy a lot, right, and split it up and build and just own it and go to the next lot and split it up, build and own it. And then they could start slowly selling them off. And
well, they'd have to go to the 2 lots down.
You can go next door.
But still, same concept, right?
Or another part of town, or trust me, they'll get around it.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'll go ahead and take questions. I know it's an important issue, and a lot of people are going to have a lot of questions. And Thanks for putting all this together, Randy and Mike, and hopefully we can get an urgency ordinance passed and send it off the Planning Commission. For the other issue I wanted to bring up was the cost to the city, public safety, right? So the city loses money on residential development. We only get in Redondo Beach 16.5% of property tax revenue back to Redondo Beach. So what does that mean? That means if you spend $1 million on a house, right, which is about what houses are going for, or even more, your property taxes per year is going to be $10,000. Redondo Beach only gets 16.5% back of that, which is a whopping, sorry, what is that? 10,000, I'm doing math real quick here.
$1,600.
0.1, yeah, well, that's easy enough, right? A whopping $1,600 a year. So while real estate taxes from residential development in Redondo Beach is our number one revenue source in Redondo, $35 million. It's also our number one cost driver, right, to public safety and public works. So Redondo Beach loses money on residential development. So it'd be good to be able to find a way to capture that going forward, so that if they're allowed to do these lot splits, that they also have to fund proper fees and or reimbursements for us to provide the services so desired as in SB9. Again, it's more in the weeds with legal mumbo jumbo, but the fact is dollars in, dollars out, and we can't afford this. And so we have to find a way to provide the funds for the services required to carry out SB9, and that is in SB9. They kind of weasel around it. Anyway, with that, I'll call on Councilmember Lowenstein.
Okay, well, I thought it was next. I thought Councilmember MD was next, but I'll go. Unless you want to go, Laura. Do you want to go?
That'd be great. I thought it was too. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I appreciate that. I agree with that Redondo should be fighting back against the state when it comes to local control. And on that basis, we all voted for the resolution to oppose SB9. But tonight, it's about the effects of SB9 will have on Redondo and how we can make sure it doesn't deteriorate our residents' quality of life. And so there's some things we need to put in perspective, in my opinion. So when you compare us to other cities, 62% of LA City's developable area is zoned for single family. And they, according to certain articles, they said that 6.7% of those LA County lots would make financial sense to add those units. So neighborhoods like Tarzana, Bel Air, Brentwood, Jefferson Park are examples of communities that are dominated by single family zoning. San Francisco, for example, percentage of land zoned for single family is 37%, much smaller than LA County. But you know what it is in Redondo? The percentage of land zoned for single family homes is only 18%. 18%. Plus the 3% that are like the tall and skinnies, the small lot single family residential. So for a total of 21% total. So it shows that Redondo Beach has already done quite a bit of what SB9 is trying to do statewide. So while it shows that SB9 will not solve the affordability crisis, nor does SB9 take into account cities that have already lowered their percentage of land dedicated to single family zoning. It does not take into account cities that have already done a lot to lower the percentage of single family zoning. That's really important. But tonight, honestly, and on these ordinances, I prefer to focus on SB9 and how it's going to affect Redondo and what steps do we need to do to ease us into this new era that encourages the neighbor that we want to see for our future. So I like the fact that we're encouraging tree planting. That's great, but I'm not seeing anything in the ordinance that encourages things that further our climate action plan. So, for example, we're not requiring cool roofs or solar panels or gray water systems into these homes, and I think that's really important for us to be able to meet climate change ahead of time. So, I'd like to see those added into those ordinances on there, and I really object to the name of the resolution, which is, I had it here, I'm sorry, what's it called? the name is mitigating the impacts of SB9. I don't think that's really in the spirit in which the objective, what they would call objective guidelines. And so I think it just shows a negative connotation. And even though you're angry enough to make it negative, I don't think it helps our case in any way to show that we, what our intent is tonight. And so I don't want to wordsmith it at this moment, but I just think that just sends the wrong message that mitigating the impacts. It should be something more along the lines of how to encourage, life in a world with SB9. I don't care how we say it, but it's just some things to think about in this litigious world.
Yeah, I would just say, I would just note that is, I think, only located in like the public hearing language of it's not in the titles of the actual ordinances.
But it's in it says if you look at the bottom of the page, ordinance number 03224-21, ordinance mitigating the impacts of SB9-inland. I mean, that's what you're calling it. And so I just think it doesn't send the right message. But that's just me.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Brand. A couple things. One is in the ordinance, it says planting mature trees to replace trees. Can we say planting mature trees, period?
Okay. Let me pull up my
It says the mature trees are used as replacement trees. It also says planting trees as well, planting a tree. But can't you make, I think Pasadena did that, right?
I think we had a certain size. So the
6 inches.
No, that's what a mature tree is. And if you're replacing a mature tree, you have to provide I want to say that one was a 36-inch box tree. If it was just the new tree for each new unit is 24-inch box tree. So our landscape ordinance actually has mentions for the replacement of the replacement of a mature tree, it requires a 36-inch box tree. So it gives a certain size of what that tree will be. Pasadena has a very, very robust tree ordinance already in place, so they can reference that. And so I wanted to pull from what we did have, and especially when we're trying to get something done quickly to make sure that we're at least addressing what we have in our code and what we require.
So we could do what you put for the urgency and then perhaps put mature for the ordinance after it goes through the planning commission, the regular ordinance.
Sure.
Okay.
Todd, can I just support that, what you're saying? I think what you said was referencing is correct. All it says, Brandy, is it says a requirement for a minimum of 2 mature trees on site, selected from the city's native and protective species list. All it would do is you would in ours would be a requirement of a minimum of 2 mature trees on site, selected from the city's approved list of trees. I mean, it doesn't need to get any fancier than that. And I just want to support Todd's mention of that.
Okay. So I guess, as Laura said, doing that, but for the regular ordinance, not the urgency, because the urgency, we just need to get through it quickly. The second thing is we just talked about how do we keep individuals from going out and selling this to these subdivided lots to corporations. Can we prohibit that at all later, even after it's split?
I don't know if you can prohibit sale of a property to different entities. What we are prohibiting is that it can't be a corporation that's doing the lot split, and it can't be a corporation that's doing the 2 units on a lot. Because the intent of the ordinance was that, whoever's owning it should be remaining on the property. If they're leasing the lot, they should be remaining on the property for at least 3 years. So, the point being is, it's showing that there's some interest in it not being just a developer-driven process. But I don't know if you can prohibit who can purchase a property later down the road. I don't know property rights wise. I leave that to the city attorney.
Off the top of my head, I would say no, but we're compiling a list of your concerns, ideas, and then we'll review them for the urgency ordinance over the next week. And then Brandy will be taking all of them to the planning commission if you direct to go to them. I think the idea behind it is the rather weak attempt that the legislature put in to make certain that homeowners who occupy it, but as we talked, I think last meeting, it's really weak because they have to file an affidavit that they intend to live in the house for 3 years. And I imagine that intent may often end as soon as the project is complete. So, but
say they can't purchase it, then rent it out for 3 years.
It says they intend to live in there for 3 years, but
intention and actuality are what you do.
Yeah, well, hey, my intention changed.
Yeah,
right.
You say they have to. So, but the idea of tonight is we want to hear all those ideas, and the ideas that we can look at and say, okay, I think we have a colorable argument we can put in the urgency ordinance for next time, and then the normal process through the planning commission, we can further vet it out. And if I may, Councilwoman MD, would something like providing objective standards for pursuant to SB9 for the title?
Oh, I love that. That'd be great.
Well, it's not mine. That's the one Beverly Hills used, but I wasn't as comfortable as living happily through an SB9 world. So
I don't think I went that far, but okay, thanks.
Our intent is to obey the law. That's our intent.
Right. And I like
Our
it.
intent.
Right. Thank you.
So, but can you say for the regular ordinance, not for the urgency, that the owner must live there, not intends to live there?
my guess is no, because that would, at some point you cross over beyond objective standards pursuant to the law and rewriting a state law, which you can't do. And so my initial thought is no, but we'll look at, at
least I gave it a shot.
Yeah, we'll look at every idea that you have so that we can make certain, initially the stuff that was in there, and you see every city is doing this, or most cities are. The stuff that's in there was, as Ms. Forbes said, the stuff that the SB9 specifically authorizes cities to do. But if you don't do it, you can't enforce it if you don't put it in your ordinance. So the 4 means 4 wouldn't necessarily mean 4 without the urgency ordinance. And I think that's the most crucial thing to be put in there. I'd also direct you to look at the Beverly Hills one, see what you like. They have the lots can be up to 60-40 difference in SB9. They restrict it to 52-48 to try and make them as close to even as possible. So you'll have to look at those, see what things you want the planning community development department in my office to look at.
Okay. And then the last thing is actually Eugene Solomon brought this up, and that is considering individual ownership. Would a family trust be considered individual, or would that be individual? Because anybody could establish a family trust and go out and buy it. The other thing is, what about a limited partnership that's owned by a corporation?
What we had for the definition was individual property owner means a natural person holding fee title individually or jointly in the person's own name, or a beneficiary of a trust that holds fee title. It does not include any corporation or corporate person of any kind, such as a partnership, LP, LLC, C Corp, S Corp, for a community land trust.
I think you want to add in there as a trustee, because if property is held by a trust, it's held in the name of the trustee.
What about a family's limited partnership? So it's kind of a hybrid, right? You've got a family owning it, but it's a limited partnership.
Let me pull it. I mentioned what it had. It specifies, instead of just such as partnership LP, it also had like the code section that defines corporations. So
okay,
my Adobe like shut down on me and closed all my different things. So I wanted to pull up that particular blue folder.
You know that people are going to push the limit on this. They're going to try to do everything they can.
You are absolutely right. They will.
Yeah.
We see it all the time with the ADUs and.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had. Does not include any corporate or corporate person of any kind. So, it's, we can definitely add more. If you have particular language that you would like to see in the urgency ordinance or the permanent ordinance that addresses some of these, please forward along, because I think that that's going to be, I'm just working off of pulling it from another draft. So I may not know all of those different corporate entities and the loopholes that you're suggesting might happen.
I would say anything that is considered a limited partnership, an LLC, which could be a multi-person or could be single person, nonprofits. I mean, there's all kinds of people that can go together in terms of a corporate structure. That those should be prohibited from doing this. The only people that should be able to do it should be individuals or families. But I think I'd be very careful about a family trust, because that sometimes crosses the line in terms of being a corporation. So lots of big projects are done in the name of family trust. So that's it for me. That's what I would say. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Nairn.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. So we have our heritage tree ordinance coming back eventually. How will that impact SB9 and what we're doing here with this ordinance?
So with that, going back to the requirements for I'm just pulling up the 2 on a lots. We had that requirement of the ordinances require that all other applicable standards apply to the extent that they do not conflict with state law, including applicable requirements for affordable housing. It would also mean any other requirements. Now, if they're unable to get the 2 units of 800 square feet each, then we'd have to make adjustments, they'd have to come as much feasible. So it might be requiring that fee in lieu of instead, which is, why we at least started with something in the urgency ordinance with, the tree requirement, the tree replacement.
Right.
If that comes back, they have to meet that code as, to the extent feasible to still provide 2 800 square feet units. Now, if they have 1 unit that's beyond that, and you can say, well, you need to find a way to make it work with 2 800 square feet. It's not like a 1,200 and 800 square feet. It's 2 800 square feet that you can, you have to make the adjustment to the requirement.
Okay. And we have on our R1 lots a 20-foot setback on the front, I believe, or 25 feet on the front. I think front setbacks 20 or 25 feet. Does SB9 impact that?
Yes, it does. It's the requirement is that, back to that extent feasible. I'm just pulling up our draft ordinance because we put it in the draft. Specifically talked about setbacks because that, in outdoor living space. And I had mentioned that.
Three replacements, but I didn't see the.
So the thing is we have to, let me find this up.
Shall apply to projects subject to this chapter. This open space center shall apply to the maximum extent feasible. Okay.
Right. So, and then also with that setbacks, the exceptions, no setback is required for an existing legally established structure or for a new structure that is constructed in the same location and to the same dimensions as the existing legally established structure. And that, and then the requirement is even if to provide 800 square feet units, they still are going to have, like, if they can't do it with the setbacks being 4 feet, well, that's the side and rear. You're right. The front yard, it doesn't have a specification about that front yard.
Okay.
So then that the extent feasible. If they can't get those two primary units on there at 800 square feet each without encroaching into that front setback, they can encroach to the point where they can provide 800 square foot units.
Okay, so then what happens if there's a heritage tree in that setback zone where they would have to remove the tree? And if they get that, then they just pay the in lieu fee? Because what I also want to prevent from happening is just the removal of the tree. And
Agreed, understood. I think that that's something that we can look at for the permit right now. I think we can, we have what we have in the urgency, and maybe that's something we explore a little bit more on, what do you give on? And we'll push back, our department's going to say, well, you can't just say, this is where I want to put it. And so, and maybe they could have put more in their side yard, or they didn't, get to the side yard setback, but they are doing it just to try and get rid of the tree. We can just say, well, you have the space here. You can't encroach into the front yard setback if you haven't already gone up to the limit of your side and rear yard setback. So maybe it's something along those lines.
Okay. And then let's see here. If we're gonna wordsmith the title, I would just say enforce and fully define all aspects of SB9. That's essentially what we're doing. So enforcing and defining everything that we can possibly define in SB9. I think that's it. Thank you.
Hey, Councilmember Obaji.
I guess my one question is, is this the time, Randy, for us to be doing residential design guidelines, or is that something that's going to come to us later after it ends up from, Planning Commission deals with it?
Yeah, the residential design guidelines are going to be coming back to you separately. And those are going to be in the same vein of, if you're requiring it and they can't meet that 800 square feet, that it will be
suggestive but not mandatory.
Yeah, because it's just yet another reference from the zoning code that has to meet the residential design guidelines. But we're looking at the residential design guidelines doesn't set the setbacks. It doesn't set that height per se. It's just going to set more of like the objective of bulk and massing. And I just, I have to look at whether or not, like, how much we can do with that. It has to be objective, which we will be doing in our residential design guidelines. But that's something that when that comes back to you, it's going to be several months down the road. And that might be something additional that we're looking at, those design guidelines as we're looking at it for all of the different residents.
Well, I guess to address Councilmember Emby's comment that, we're not doing anything to address climate change in this ordinance. Where is the opportunity to address, to mitigate climate change exacerbating features?
I think the climate change would be having the Planning Commission look at that. What are the specific, because remember, it's not just like you have to comply with our climate change ordinance. You have to have objective standards. So it may be that we'll look at, that's one of the suggestions is we want to have the Planning Commission look at including this. We will, as staff, look at that and say, here are the different components that seem like that they would, that they match. Because there are going to be some parts of the climate action plan that don't pertain to development at all, but those that do, we'll make sure that we're calling those out in an objective way.
Okay. All right, that's it. I would just suggest that whatever we send with direction. Eventually that the Planning Commission address, climate change preventing features in our design regulations and come back to us with suggestions for our ordinances, like plant a mature tree if feasible, et cetera. No turf, et cetera.
Brandy, you mentioned climate action plan. Is Planning Commission working on that right now?
No, we have an adopted one. So, and I think is that Laura, I know you referenced that, am I correct that you referenced the climate action plan? So we have one adopted. They're not working, that's not part of the general plan update or anything like that. It's not included in the general plan, but we already have that in place. The point being is it's so comprehensive, it's going to be more than just development climate action items. So we want to focus in on what things would actually pertain to, single family residential zones.
Well, there's state laws that require solar energy.
Agreed.
Correct? Right.
Agreed.
So doesn't that apply to these units that are being generated by SB9?
That will, and that will through our building code. But, I think that it's worthwhile for us to take a look at that climate action plan and just make sure that we have, and, it doesn't hurt to also say that's one of the recommendations that, it's required for the building, just so people are aware it's still going to happen regardless if you're going under SB9.
So you mean we should add that maybe to one of these ordinances?
I don't think you need to do the urgency.
Don't need to.
We'll look at it for the permanent.
What about electrical charging? Isn't electrical charging required by state law now in new units?
It's not required. It's municipalities are required to expedite the review.
Expedite. Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, just to piggyback on Councilmember Obaji's comment. So, Brandy, I think, what would be important is maybe for staff to distill out of our existing climate action plan what maybe is germane to the conversation. But I would add that as an attachment to that item when it comes before them, because, truth be told, every decision we make within the city should be kind of looked through the lens of the climate action plan. And then we may want to check with the COG. They're in the middle of kind of doing a reevaluation on GHG assessments for all the cities. And I don't know if that'll have any potential sway or impact on anything that you may present to them, but just throwing it out there. And then if there is, to the mayor's point, any way to reinforce the recent building codes that have come across in recent years to ensure that any new changes, not just new development, right, but any changes to the properties are somehow incorporated into that, that would be super helpful. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji again.
Sorry, one last question. Is something like requiring a 22 volt outlet, is that something that we could require within this ordinance? Because if people are going to be living so close to one another, then we don't want them revving up loud cars in their single car garage, but instead a quiet electric car. Is that something that we could throw in? Like, hey, you got to have a.
Hey, we'll consider it.
All right, cool.
Well, we can't require minimum parking requirements. So where are you going to put your car to plug it in?
Right.
Sure, but you could require, you might be able to require that
Right.
as.
Require a parking space?
No. If they are required to have the parking space, they have to provide the EV charging at that parking space.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another thing they didn't think of out there. If we can't require one minimum parking space, right? If you're within half a mile of a bus stop or major transit stop, you cannot require even one parking space per unit, right?
You can't. However, in those, remember, this isn't as blanketed as the ADU definition of bus stop. Here it is that, mind you, we're at the mercy of what the bus lines put their schedules at. But if it's that here, it's that 15-minute window between.
Well, whatever the standard is, if we fall within that standard, in this case, I think it's 15 minutes, we cannot even require one parking spot.
Agreed.
Per unit.
Absolutely.
That's what I want people to understand.
Right. Absolutely.
If we are within their parameters of what defines a bus stop, which in this case is every 15 minutes during rush hour period, the city cannot require one minimum parking spot per unit. They can't require any minimum parking. You're banned from requiring minimum parking. Right?
Right.
I just want to be clear.
Yeah, you're correct. I think the point is, in those cases where we can require it, we should also have then I think what Councilmember Obagi is saying is then we also require that we have to provide an EV charging station at that.
Well, not so much the station as much as a compatible electric.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you.
Outlet, so that they don't have to do rewiring and call an expensive electrician to install.
Right. Sorry, just terminology.
Yeah, we're crossing over what we want to require.
Right.
The absurdity of this that, I don't know, everybody's going to take the bus now or ride
So
scooter.
stuff like, just to be clear, the stuff like rainwater recapture on a single property and shade providing trees, either planting them or replanting them, that'll be addressed by the Planning Commission and that'll come back to us at some later point, correct?
Right.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So the bus scheduler at Metro will be determining our building standards. He can just, with one stroke of a pen, he or she go, you know what, we're going to run that bus more frequently. And then bam, you can't require minimum parking standards. So, anyway, I guess that's all the question. Let's go to public comment. Public comment, Eleanor.
Okay, we have Wayne Craig.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One thing I was going to mention, being in the real estate business, we see lots of things happen where people have an initial intent and then that intent changes. For example, we see often people who take out a loan with the intention of, say, buying a triplex, and they're going to move in and actually reside in one of the 3 units. But then somehow they don't end up doing that. Now, if the bank doesn't find out about it, nothing really happens. Now, the recourse is they can say lender fraud and potentially cancel the loan. The thing is, in this situation, if say someone, they intend to do this under their own name and they don't, what kind of teeth is the city going to have in order to kind of deter that? Because you may not be able to, and according to what Mike said, I think he's right. People can change their minds all the time. But if someone does say, for example, have an intent and they change your mind, can the city impose any kind of, financial penalty on that at some later date? I don't know if there's something that could be, worked up in time for this emergency ordinance, but into the future, it's something you may want to consider. Anyway, just wanted to bring that up.
Okay, I have Holly Osborne.
Yes, I thought of one thing. Suppose a developer has 2 properties and they're not next to each other. And he applies to do this splitting and stuff for both of them at the same time. He obviously can't sign an honest letter of intent to live in both of them simultaneously. Are you going to have any cross-check on how many properties a guy is trying to do this to at the same time? That's obvious lie. You ought to be able to catch that.
You're right. It is something that would stand out. The problem is, we have so many applications that come through. I don't know if we'll have to look to see if we have something in our permit tracking system that would trigger that. But the difficulty is it could be one planner reviewed one, another reviewed another, and we don't have that information. Now we will track it or ticket it as in that system as an SB9. We will be able to do that, but being able to say and the thing is they may just have that. I think there are other ways that they'll loophole out, around that by just rather than just submitting their own name and committing perjury. Because they would have to sign that affidavit if they're splitting the lot, it's saying that that's their intent.
They just put it in their spouse's name.
Right.
It's a community property state, so.
Yeah, I think that there are plenty of ways that they would otherwise do that rather than perjure themselves.
Okay. Any more public comment?
We have an e-comment. Go ahead, Vicki.
Submitted by Eugene Solomon. Consider what individual ownership may include. Is it a term of art or do we need to specifically describe? Would it include a family trust, a family limited partnership? What is corporate ownership? Would it include single person LLC, a nonprofit? Are limited partnerships included as corporate ownership? Thank you for the opportunity. And that concludes the comments.
Yeah, there's a lot of permutations of how ownership could be structured. You could have multiple LLCs and one individual in that group. So it's complicated. Okay. I guess, Brandy, you've got a lot of information. You've gotten a lot of feedback. Are you comfortable coming back with something now that we can consider for adoption in terms of an urgency ordinance next week?
Well, this item is actually the public hearing.
Right.
Item N1 is the urgency ordinance. So
I'm sorry.
I think for this, it will save us time once we get to N1. In this motion, I think what we would propose you do is close the public hearing and then refer it with all your comments to the Planning Commission to meet at their next meeting, which I think is January 27th. When we get to N1, the urgency ordinance will, if you adopt it the 21st, it's only good for 45 days. Then you have to investigate, you do further investigation, and the Planning Commission's comments will be useful. So I think just close public hearing, refer it to Planning Commission, and ask them to look at it and take all your comments into consideration.
Okay, thank you for that, Mike.
Motion closed.
Quick question though, in a situation like this, would it be better to have the Planning Commission call a special meeting earlier in January so that way it doesn't put them up against the edge of, that 45-day period?
Probably a good idea.
I think we actually went later because they couldn't, given this time of year, they couldn't publicly notice the hearing.
Right. Yeah, we were concerned that timing wise that we weren't going to be able to do the public notification. It just gives us that opportunity because with the holidays and getting that notice to the paper, it's we moved the meeting to the 27th. But I think that that's plenty of opportunity. It also gives them an opportunity to come up to speed on SB9 because this is, they can now, we'll be able to refer them to the November 16th meeting, to this meeting, to next week's meeting for them to see the discussion and hear what the city council's, thoughts and concerns are as well. And then that kind of prepares them a little bit more for that discussion rather than them jumping back after the holidays and 2 weeks later having to really, chew on it.
Fair enough.
So you said, Brandy, there's a meeting the 27th? Is that what you said?
January 27th.
Is that a special meeting?
Yeah, it'll be a special meeting. They'll carry their the meeting to that because we're going to have a couple of public hearings, and for us to really have the public hearing notices, have the right information in it. It's just, for us to try and pull that together, we won't even have the urgency ordinance adopted if we, continue that to next meeting.
Okay, I got it. So we're going to adopt the urgency ordinance the 21st, and then there's 45 days from that.
You'll be okay to have it on for the February 1st. That's like the 42nd day, I think is what we did.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Obaji.
So for a period of time, just clarifying question, the SB9 will operate in Redondo Beach without any sort of customization that Redondo Beach is doing to promote affordability.
No, you'll have it under the urgency ordinance.
Yeah, just the next item on the agenda.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the urgency ordinance, is not let that to be the case, and then put all the things you want and can put in a permanent ordinance.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilmember Obaji, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. Any objection? Okay, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion?
Motion to continue. Do we need to continue the public hearing? Or?
No, no. So you close the public hearing.
You'll renotice it for next time we meet. Got it.
Yeah, so we'll notice it. I would say, I think what the city attorney said was refer the item to the Planning Commission for their January 27th meeting to look at SB9 and to take the council comments into consideration for providing recommendations.
I would make the motion to do exactly as you said.
All right, okay, I'll second that with a slight suggestion of amendment, which is that the planning director provide a summary of the comments, or somebody in the city staff provide a summary of the comments made by city council to the planning commission, because they're not going to watch this whole thing.
No, agreed. We would definitely do a staff report.
Got it. All right,
That's just a given. Yeah.
Okay, well, there's a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nairnut.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, there you go. Excellent. So next up, item N1, excuse me. Adopt by title only an urgency ordinance, an interim urgency ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, amending the Redondo Beach Municipal Code, Title 10, Chapters 1, 2, and 5 to address Senate Bill 9. Okay, Brandy Forbes again.
Yes. So presentation. That's why I did the kind of the joint presentation with the last agenda item. This urgency ordinance, tonight you can consider adopting to or carrying it to the December 21st, 2021 meeting to incorporate any additional language you might want to regarding affordability or other restrictions. And it would be adopted and immediately effective and thus be in place prior to the January 1st, 2022 effective date of SB9. And basically putting into place all of the different requirements that I provided in the presentation. And we can, I would say you could receive and file that PowerPoint presentation. I'll make sure the clerk has that.
Well, we kind of gave you the input, right, Brandy?
Well, the question with the urgency ordinances, you could either adopt it tonight the way it is, or if you wanted to have that affordability requirement in there, we can include that, carry this to next meeting to include that, and then you could adopt it on the 21st.
Yeah, and I definitely recommend that to further. We have all your direction. We understand what's urgency versus what more permanent ordinance, but also we don't want the 45 days to run from tonight because we'd like to have the planning commission be able to speak to it.
We just talked about that. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And you can look further into the affordable if we want to include that in this or not. Councilmember MD.
I just want to clarify then what we're passing is exactly what's written and what we see now. It's not that any changes on there or you're saying.
Well, we're not passing anything tonight, apparently, but it'll come back and they might make some changes.
Right.
I'll take back.
You continue it until next Tuesday.
I'll take back my recommendation of the option of adopting as is, because that's what the city attorney was saying is if we start the clock on the 21st, then we can.
We'll make that. Okay. I just want to make sure. It's just I don't agree with some of the comments that were made, and we'll go with that fight next week. That's okay.
Exactly, and can be further informed of what the potential benefits and risks are.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Narron.
Yeah, I would like to have some of the affordability aspects in there. Just want to get that on the record. And then I'll make a motion and we can talk the public comments, but I'll just make a motion to move this item to next week, add the affordability item to the urgency ordinance, and that's it.
Second.
Okay, motion in a second. Is there any public comment?
So I have no public comments for Zoom or e-comment.
Okay.
That's strange because I could have sworn somebody wrote in Brian Pressman. He said he'd written in. He didn't have anything, huh?
I don't have anything here. N1. Nope.
What about the public hearing? Is he there?
Nope. That was just Eugene Solomon.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Narron, do you mean to still have your hand up?
I do not. No, I'm good.
Okay. Is the motion a second? Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narron.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay. There we go. So we're on to N2, discussion and possible action on the prioritization of streets to be improved as part of the deferred maintenance street reconstruction project. Ted Simon, our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Before I turn it over to Lauren Sablon, who is going to be presenting this for you, and Lauren is our principal engineer, I just wanted to introduce the item as the $1.5 million project that you allocated monies for as part of your final budget in June. We met with each of the city council members for each of the districts. The presentation that Lauren will be given is a culmination of these meetings, and we are seeking your direction on the approach and recommended roadway segments that you would like to have this consider for design and eventual construction. So with that, I will turn it over to Lauren, and with us also is Andy Wingy, our city engineer. So Lauren.
Great.
Good evening, and Mayor. Let me see.
Hi, Lauren.
Start sharing. All right. So here we go. All right, to give you a brief refresher, the city maintains approximately 152 centerline miles of streets, which is valued at approximately $180 million. The city evaluates its streets every 3 years to comply with funding requirements. And in 2017, a pivot point was a pivot point for us as council set a goal to improve the city's PCI from 70 to 75 within 10 years. To achieve this goal, the city will need to invest $46.2 million over that 10 years. The goal is also sets the priorities for our city's residential street rehab and slurry seal programs. In 2020, the city reevaluated its streets, and it was determined that the average PCI had increased to 72. The updated report was presented to council last fall and is on the city's website. The streets need rehabilitation will not be done are considered deferred maintenance, since $46.2 million is not enough to restore all of the streets in 10 years. The current deferred maintenance streets are valued at $16 million. In 10 years, this value is estimated to grow to $28.5 million. However, council has approved a new program to try to address some of the deferred maintenance inventory by allocating $1.5 million for next fiscal year. Before you tonight for your direction are potential prioritization options for the deferred maintenance program. One option is to focus on the identified deferred maintenance streets that have realized multiple segments, or those streets that are anticipated to deteriorate the fastest. Another is the worst first approach, prioritizing either the current worst PCI or projected worst PCI in 10 years. A fifth option is to revert to past practice of creating a priority list based on geography or district. And there's also targeting the busiest streets on the deferred maintenance list, or using this funding as a gap closure as well for deferred maintenance streets that are adjacent to projects that are currently on our CIP list. To give you an overview, this map shows the identified deferred maintenance streets citywide in 2030. And this map here shows all the street CIP projects from 2016 to 2020. This third map is the CIP projects that have been identified for the 2022 to 2026. And this is just the compilation of the 3 citywide maps for your reference. This map shows where there are deferred maintenance streets adjacent to upcoming and past CIP projects. If the priority were for the streets with multiple segments or that deteriorate the fastest, we would see 182nd, Grant Avenue, Diamond Street, Catalina being prioritized. Whereas the current worst streets are specific blocks of Gates, Blossom, Spire, and Slauson. And the segments of Grant, McKay, and Slauson, it changes up if for those streets that are projected to have the worst PCI in 2030. That's based on deterioration and usage. The next series of maps, we are providing the cost estimates for a variety of deferred maintenance street segments by district. So that could be selected for priority funding. In District 1, we see Catalina showing multiple segments. And it should be noted that for those that do have multiple segments, we also included the complementary segments, which means some of the blocks only identified half of the street up to the center line as being deferred maintenance, and we wouldn't do just half the street. So we included the other side of the street as well in the cost. In District 2, Diamond showed multiple segments and being in the deferred maintenance category in 2023. In District 3, we have 182nd Street, which borders also along District 4 and showed up in multiple segments. And Grant Avenue was identified with several deferred maintenance segments as well in District 4. And along District 5 and 4's boundary, Matthews showed contiguous segments as well. While the alleys do not contribute to the city's citywide PCI and are not included in deferred maintenance category for the pavement management report, I do have the cost to rehab the alleys with a PCI of less than 50, which were provided as an attachment to the admin report and are available tonight if requested. So council can provide direction on a holistic approach for the $1.5 million project scope by choosing a couple of key collector streets or capture the deferred maintenance streets that are adjacent to a current project as a gap closure. Or council can direct staff to spend approximately $300,000 in each district by providing a list of approximately $250,000 worth of streets per district. To clarify, there would be $50,000 that needs to be used for design and construction management and inspection as well. Therefore, staff is recommending that council receive and file this report and provide direction for the deferred maintenance program. And we look forward to your questions and input.
And thanks, Lauren. And if I could add, Mayor, it is important tonight that you give us specific direction on the segments. The purpose of us laying out and spending time to provide you the cost estimates for those various areas that you helped us identify in some of your early input is to allow you tonight to give us sort of those specific areas you'd like to see included in our final plans and specifications. So, and particularly so if your choice tonight is to allow every district to have the approximately $250,000 to $300,000 approach.
How would that work, Mike? If all 5 council members came up with different, priority streets they wanted, and they just handed you the list. I mean, who goes first?
Here's what I would do is I would say, go district by district. We'll put the maps back up. There's materials in your packet to talk about alleyways in the case of District 1, where there might be some additional options that would be pursued. And we would say, hey, here are the three locations in District 1. Here are the 3 locations or 4 locations in District 2, et cetera. And we'll bring those back as part of our plans and specifications. And you heard Lauren, the reason we would target something less than 300 is to provide a little bit of contingency there as we go to final plans and specifications. And I would also remind the council that at mid-year, you'll have an opportunity perhaps to do some supplementing of various capital projects as well with the residual funding you'll need to consider allocating. So there's an opportunity to expand on some of these segments as well at that time when we come back with plans and specs. So we're seeking as specific a direction as you can provide tonight and help us. It really helps us as we finalize design.
So the step for any of these is to begin design, right? And
yep.
I mean, I'm trying to get a handle on the timing. So if everybody handed you the streets they wanted right after this meeting, where would you start?
All right, well, let me do this. Lauren, could you go back to, why don't you start with District 1 in the street?
No, that's not my question. Let's just say this is all decided already. Everybody already.
Okay, tonight. Let's assume.
Handed you I'm getting at priorities. Is staff, is everything going to get done at the same time? It's not a problem?
Yes, no. What would happen is all the segments that get identified tonight will be included in our next round of construction drawings. We anticipate adding this, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ted or Lauren or Andy, to our residential resurfacing project program. Is that correct? Yes.
You're absolutely right. If we were to choose the smaller segments, roadway segments as an example, that's probably the best way to approach that and incorporate that as an addendum or an amendment to our residential street rehab contract and just get that consultant to start up on these streets as they work on the others. If we were to choose a single roadway segment such as Diamond or Catalina or Grant, then we'll probably be seeking one of our bench consultants or to go through an RFP process to bring on a consultant and initiate that design process for that roadway segment.
Right. And so if the assumption is every district provides their list, we would incorporate it and we would move forward and it would be part of our next bidding effort for that residential reconstruction program.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my hand around, having the money and the ambition to get this done. Just want to understand what the timing is. It sounds like they could just all get done at once. You've got an unlimited bench of designers in construction companies that are going to just execute all this.
Well, I think in the case of the segment approach, it's really no different than what we're already doing when we design our resurfacing effort for throughout the city, right? It's all we're doing here is we're adding a new spec that says for these blocks, we want you to do a 2-inch grind and overlay or whatever it might be, depending on the nature of the degradation. And that gets added to the overall list that's already compiled. If we say, okay, we're going to spend all of the 1.5 million and reconstruct Diamond Street or Grant Avenue or 182nd, then to Ted's point, we would probably seek a standalone project that would then be designed in full and then bid later. In a sense, that would take a little more time than what will probably happen if you direct us to do segments within each district.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Councilmember Lawrence.
This shows funding. Oh, can you hear me okay? Okay. Can you go back to the slide that says about funding the projects that have already been funded? Go back. Keep going. Yes. No. This one. Yeah. Why isn't all of Burrell there? It's been fully funded. Is that just an oversight?
This segment of
I don't know part.
Yeah,
sorry,
east of PCH to.
So that's actually going to be included as part of the 2021 project. And so then it is showing up. It's already been funded. It's already here. Yes, it could have been on this one as well. But it should show up right here.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, I saw it on that. I just didn't see it. It says completed. It's not been completed, obviously. It's funded, it seems like. Okay.
No, it's in design right now. We've got those
okay.
in the works.
My preference on this would be that each district has the 250/300 to 300. We each have streets that we need to attack, and rather than getting one street done in a district, it's going to take a lot more effort and a lot more funding. So for District 2, I would recommend Francisca Avenue N1 and N2, as well as Gertruda Avenue N. And that equals, I believe, something in the neighborhood of 271. So any difference will be made up to me out of the money of the $100,000 that we allocated per district. So I know we're not supposed to go above 250, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Then those are construction costs, Councilmember Lowenstein. The $50,000, as Lauren said, would be reserved for the design and construction management and inspection.
Okay, so I guess then the difference would be I don't know. What would the difference be? Would it be $50,000?
$28,000.
Yeah,
Would it be $28,000?
And what we could do, Councilman, is we can finalize that after we receive construction bids, because these are project level estimates right now. When we actually get to bid, we may have to appropriate additional money in general for these items. So we don't need to be that precise today. We appreciate the gesture that if at the end of the day, these particular segments result in more than $300,000 of expenses, we'll have to identify supplemental funds. One option could be your $100,000 district allocation as part of the regular CIP. So we'll bring back the final tally. Giving us something at that 270 range is a good place for us to begin.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so you have my preference and my streets.
And Lauren, you clearly understand what those segments are?
I do, yep.
Right.
Just to verify, we have N1, Francisca, and 2, Francisca and Gertruda.
Correct. Yep. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
All right, so I take a slightly different approach or a different perspective than Councilmember Lowenstein, insofar as if we look at the map of the identified deferred maintenance streets by 2030, which somebody else is sharing. So if you could please stop sharing, or else.
Or Lauren, you can go to that page. I think.
Or yeah, if you can go to that page. The one with the red lines on it.
Okay.
The whole city. All right, we see that the majority of cities that have deferred maintenance as 2030 are in, I guess, north of 190th Street. That's not to say that District 2, District 1 shouldn't get any love, but clearly there's a part of our city that either gets traversed more or has gotten historically less attention. So what I'd wonder, and I also, but I do agree with Councilmember Lowenstein insofar as I don't think that we should put all this money towards one street, especially if once, these major streets like collectors like Grant Avenue, which is in poor shape and even in poorer shape after Cal Water got done with it. And I don't think they're done with it now, but if it's eligible for other grant funds, so that it's not coming out of our own funds. So first question, I guess, is Catalina down there in District 1, Grant Avenue up here, Diamond Street, are those eligible for some other grant fundings?
Not that I'm aware of at this particular point. It's not, even if we were to have signal system upgrades as we have for Grant Avenue, you can only do so much of the makeup paving, if you will, but you can't use that to do majority or significant repaving of roadways.
I would add one caveat, though, maybe not competitive grant fundings, but correct me if I'm wrong, Ted. Diamond and Catalina are eligible for Prop C funding, correct? Because they have transit bus activity, whereas Grant Avenue does not. So they do have access to at least one additional line of transportation restricted funding.
Okay, transportation, but as a collector, Grant Avenue does not get any of those except for maybe Measure R or something like that. Local return funds.
Yeah, those would be all streets are eligible for local return funds. But in this case, Grant would not have access to the transportation Prop C restricted funding.
So I suppose then focusing on my district, I'd prefer that can we go to the District 4 slide by chance, please? All right. And Aviation Boulevard would be a street that would get that would be eligible for some sort of grant funding, other than local return, or no? I mean, I feel like I've seen buses on it.
It is a transit.
I believe it's Prop C eligible.
Okay. Wow, just one block of Stanford would be $680,000.
8,000.
That's 68.
Oh, that's 68. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, I'd prefer to get these, small streets in the neighborhoods done. So Harper, Stanford, Ormond, Stanford, down here, Rockefeller east of Inglewood, Vanderbilt east of Inglewood, that block just west of Inglewood, McKay. I think we could pick up a lot of these small streets with, $350,000. So that would be the way that I would tend to go, and allocate a similar amount for District 3 and District 5, and maybe go light in District 1. No offense, Nils. I love South Redondo, but your guys' streets are seemingly in better shape, potentially because of lesser use. But that's it. That's all I gotta say.
Well, isn't this what Councilmember Lowenstein was doing? I'm a little or did I miss something? I thought that's what was going on.
Yeah. Identifying certain.
Yeah, Mike Witansky or Ted, are you guys clear on, is this good direction for you? Or are we going the right direction here?
Yeah, well, we are. I think what Councilmember Obaji suggests is maybe it's not an even split by district. I mean, I think he's suggesting that District 4 receive a little additional funding, given that it's got a greater number of deferred maintenance segments.
Well, and District 5 had a lot of smaller streets too.
That too, yeah.
Red. So, okay. Councilmember Narenheim.
Thank you. So the reason is not because the streets are used less, Councilmember Obaji, it's because the streets here were done more recently. You're on the tail end of the cycle. In fact, you're just starting up the cycle on your side up there. And so your streets are in a lot worse shape because of that. But I want to concentrate my monies on the alleyways because the alleyways are not eligible for grant funds. They have not been done in 20 plus years, and they do receive a lot of heavy traffic from the trash trucks and service trucks, and they are in horrible shape. I mean, there's some big potholes. I tried to go out there and get some photos the other day. Got a little bit busy. But basically, I would have my $250,000 concentrated on essentially the alleyways, the $51,000 alleyway. Is that right? No, $87,000 alleyway. What's in red? It's actually PCI 7 to 25. All of the $17,000 fixes. The $40,000 one off of between Avenue A and B, and the $40,000 one between C and D. and that would roughly leave $15,000 left. And I'd be willing to throw that into the pot for Councilmember Lowenstein or anyone else.
Well, as much as I'd like that, I'll give it to Councilmember Abaji, since his area, or Councilmember MD, whichever one, since their areas seem to have the worst of it. So thank you. I'd love it, but you know, it's not going to go very far anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Simon, that 15,000, that's going to, you know, the Catalina Avenue, that's in really bad shape between Torrance and Pearl, or Torrance and Ruby there. That's not going to do anything, that 15 grand, right?
No, that won't do anything for that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, so I initially agree with Councilmember Lowenstein's approach, but then Councilmember Obagi makes a good point. And when we decided to change the whole way we pave streets back in 2017, right, we took this long approach to it, which I still think makes sense, and I support that approach that we've taken. As I listen to everybody talk here, and I look at District 3, to just give background, District 3 was the first district that started the repaving program back in 2000. And it was done over 2 years. And, you know, not until we started this new cycle did we see any streets paved. So, and I think that cycle went 3, 5, 4 before it went to District 2 and then 1. Over the course of all these years. So when I look at the map that says the upcoming 5-year CIP projects, that has the purple, blue, green, red, to a point that Councilmember Obagi made, like, I'm looking at how do I take segments that would connect areas that are either in the process of getting slurried or part of the residential rehab, and to create a more cohesive mix, you know, especially in my district, or looking at Councilmember Obaji's district, you know, the continuation of Stanford, and, you know, so where do we turn those reds into greens and have more contiguous streets that are fully paved. So if I'm not going to make any calls tonight because I'll do the math and I'll try to look at this more closely, but I would be fine with an equal distribution, but I would prefer to Councilmember Obaji's a little bit more love thrown up into the north. And I agree with Councilmember Lowenstein that Francisca Gertruda leg between Redondo and Catalina is in dire need of a repay. You know, that's one, as I've run during the 10K, 5Ks, you know, it's bad. So I would definitely support that one, at least on the south side. That's it.
Okay, Councilmember Narenheim again.
Real quick, Mr. Simon. So the alleyway I've been asked a second ago, the alleyway on Inez there between C and D, that's not paved. I meant to reach out to those residents there. There's no PCI there because it's not paved. I don't think they necessarily want it paved, but if I reach out and there's majority of them that say that, you know what, we would like it paved, or we like some pavers, could we do pavers there instead, or something cheap? I see it's only $11,000 to do, the $11,900, so that would kind of fit within the budget. But I wonder if there's any other things that we could do other than just asphalt, because I know when I talked to them a couple of years ago, is, you know, they like the natural kind of without the asphalt.
They probably like the rural look. And if I remember,
yes,
Lauren, you can help me. This is an alley that we are probably better off vacating than actually trying to do any work on.
Okay.
I think we have a single property that still gets access from it, but they also have access from the fronting street. So that may be something that we can talk about afterwards.
Okay.
If we can work with the local property owners, it may be something to vacate rather than to try to do any other. Now, to answer your first question, yes, there are other methods that we can do. It would be outside of the scope of what our residential street rehab design consultant is looking at today. But yes, can you do pavers, something more permeable, that can be explored certainly. But I'd like to explore the idea of trying to vacate and make sure everybody has access off of the main fronting streets so that this could be vacated and we revert it back to the adjacent properties.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Councilmember Ehrenheim just kind of made me think there, you know, when we've had these discussions about Measure W and green streets and, you know, Andy's talked about, you know, potential ideas where streets could be used with pavers, although it increases noise. But, you know, in looking at that, have we kind of done an overlay of any of this with potential streets that could benefit from, you know, a more green street application? And, you know, should we be considering that before we consider a complete, you know, rehab, you know, done the traditional way with asphalt, you know?
Andy, do you want to help with that? I know you explored the green streets and other permeable type of pavements.
Right. Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a good question. We looked at green street paver applications in areas where we have ponding and kind of minor flooding during big events. Unfortunately, those places are usually with steeper street grades, and the pavers just they're not really built for that kind of travel. So it just didn't seem to be a good fit. They do better on, you know, flatter grades and that kind of thing. They are more expensive to install.
Okay.
They probably don't require the frequency of maintenance that we do for paving. So I think it's a really good question, but it's probably a bigger question than just trying to get this deferred maintenance program going, which was identified to bring our pavement, our asphalt pavement, up to a PCI to help with the PCI score. So I think it's a great question to explore. You know, I'd love to be able to look into where it might make the most sense in the city to do that kind of thing and how much of an effort it would be. But we would need to have kind of a bigger discussion about strategy there.
Got it.
Yeah, and if I may add to what Andy said, I think we've got to keep in mind that a lot of these streets that we showed you as deferred maintenance streets within the 10-year period are not necessarily deferred maintenance streets today. So they are not going to have a full reconstruction treatment. They may have more remove and replace segments, but overall it'll be segments of removal and replacement and then a grind and overlay level. So trying to remove all the pavement to consider the pavers, not only is that a different design process, but the costs would be significantly higher than the cost that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, you know, Councilmember Ehrenheim's question was focused on the alleys. And, you know, if I look at the alleys, say in my district, right over by Agate and Amethyst and stuff, typically, right, the pavement runs into a center line type gutter, right, for water, you know, capture and flow. And, you know, I'm just wondering in those cases, you know, especially where they do tend to collect a lot of water and they're not hilly, to your point, Andy, you know, are those areas where we should be thinking about down the line, you know, doing that? I'm just throwing it out there.
No, that's a good thought. We do have one alley where we installed permeable concrete is our ribbon gutter down the middle of it. And we're just kind of watching that to see how it performs over time. But that's probably a less costly solution than trying to rebuild the whole alley with pavers, for instance, or some kind of a completely permeable surface. So, we do have some solutions there that maybe we'll get the same thing done, but we can do it a little bit less expensively.
Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember MD.
I agree that we should divide them up among the different districts. If we were to although it's very attractive, I liked Mr. Obaji's suggestion and I agreed with it. But realistically, so if you take his 300,000 and divide it by 4, that's 75,000 a piece. Is it really worth that at this time when I think we could, and because he can use it for his alleys, for District 1 could use it for their alleys. And then we could, though, when we do the mid-year, we put in more towards the other 4 districts, and then that's when we would get more bang for our buck, because 75,000 I could go either way. I mean, I'm not going to argue against getting an extra 75,000, obviously, but it's
That's
just,
a good point.
it's just, I'm not sure that's truly in the spirit of all Redondo. So I'd be on board with getting an extra $75,000. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not sure that's going to help us out. Or we could do, you could also direct staff that if, like he said, these are future PCIs of what they're going to be. If they see a bigger need in some other places, give the staff some flexibility on that, and then trying to base it on the PCI ratings and kind of try to make it as equitable as possible, but really with the highest need. And then that way, we'll upgrade our streets a lot faster.
Very good.
Just a thought.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
All right. So when I was looking at the map, I was looking mainly at the red map, and that was initially what impressed me when I met with Public Works a few months ago, and seeing that there were not many streets in District 1. But I did not appreciate what I do now, which is something I've heard Councilmember Narenheim complain about often, about the alleyways. And Councilmember MD makes a good point, which is that it's only 75,000 extra for each district. It's not going to achieve a whole lot. So let's split it up evenly, and I'd ask Public Works to just prioritize mine off of Grant Avenue, as many of those little streets as possible, especially on the periphery.
So, Ted, Andy, Mike, do you guys have good enough direction?
I think we do, although Councilwoman MD, would be good to hear from you if it is going to be an even split, what your preferences are, what segments.
Well, I actually had given that to them during the meeting. And so you guys need that again? I mean,
because we have updated costing here. I just want to make sure your prioritization still is affordable with our new segments. That's the reason we wanted to bring these maps back.
Well, okay, so not to reiterate the entire meeting again, but basically, for example, Nelson had, even though it says 96,000, staff had brought a good point that Cal Water was going to be doing some work. And so they might be able to do a combination of projects. So that's going to actually be less. And so we had kind of gone through the list of the streets last time. And I was giving staff flexibility as far as to address the worst PCI streets first. And so, if I remember right, I want to say it was Gibson, Nelson, and might have even given off to Matthews or something along those lines. And so I could have to go back and look at my notes, but I counted on, we'd already kind of gone through that list.
I have Johnson.
Sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry. Excuse me, Councilmember MD. I have Nelson, Johnson, and Gibson north of Beeland is from our meeting.
Okay, there we go.
And the math is still working there, Andy?
I haven't checked that yet. I'll do that right now. Hang on.
Yes, please do. That's why we're all here.
Well, but we can,
manage our expectations.
You can work with staff. If there's something not right.
If you look at it, it's 250,000 almost exactly. So
Perfect.
there you go.
Bingo.
Yeah, I'm gonna email mine.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're all clear. That's why this is back. So we have.
So my opinion has not changed.
And manage expectations here. So
these will all be done by what, first of the year?
Right.
Next
That's what I heard. Maybe January 4th, but I agree.
Christmas.
That's what I heard.
If we're here next year and these streets are done, I will be duly impressed.
Mayor,
I'll have
I'm
the list
losing
ready by
audio.
the first of the year. Sure.
I'm losing audio. I couldn't hear that beginning.
They're going to be done by the first of the year. That's what Andy said.
He didn't define what year, though. That's the only key.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, thanks you guys. This is great stuff. Do you need a motion, or do you just kind of need this kind of feedback?
No, I think we have. Go ahead, Mike.
I say we've got the direction we need. It sounds like, just to reiterate, sounds like the district by district approach is, we're sticking with that. You've given us direction on segments. We'll follow that accordingly. We'll finalize this as part of our plans and specifications, which will come back to you with the residential resurfacing project, I think, in the next couple of months. And we'll get out to bidding, and based on finalization, we'll go from there. I suspect we'll have plenty of funding to cover the segments you've directed tonight. So,
Okay, great. Lauren, you can stop sharing the screen. So that's kind of it. You're good, Ted and everybody?
Yep, we're perfect. Thank you.
Excellent.
maybe a motion to receive and file the report.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Remedy, second by Councilmember Horvath to receive and file. Any objections?
Mayor, no,
Yeah, public comments, sorry.
no comments, no e-comments or Zoom.
Okay. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you, everybody.
Right, Ted. So, Brandy, again, discussion of possible action on the status of the General Plan Advisory Committee's remaining meetings, budget and scope and direction to staff on possible changes. So, Brandy.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. For this item, at the November 2nd City Council meeting, a referral was made to staff to prepare a discussion item on the status of the General Plan Advisory Committee's remaining work efforts and to review the resolution that establishes the GPAC, to consider possible changes to the rules regarding removal of committee members. The GPAC has conducted 23 meetings to date and has 5 more scheduled, barring any additional changes, which we're hoping we're on the right track. On October 4th, 2016, the City Council authorized updates to the land use element and the conservation, recreation, parks, and open space elements. And then on November 15th, the Council adopted a resolution forming the 27-member General Plan Advisory Committee, or GPAC. And setting forth the composition, the duties, responsibilities, and that resolution was included in the packet. The scope of the general plan was then broadened to include the environmental hazards, natural hazards element, and the local hazard mitigation plan, and the ACAP, the Artesia Aviation Corridor Area Plan. As I mentioned, the GPAC has conducted 23 meetings since their first one on April 27, 2017. They have 5 more scheduled. There have also been 3 community-wide workshops. The first was November 17, 2018, regarding the land use focus areas. There was another one on February 27th of 2020 on the ACAP. And the third was held virtually due to COVID on April 7th of this year for the draft land use plan and map. And there's one additional community-wide workshop that's planned before the formal public hearing process on the final general plan update that will happen likely in the fall this next year. There were online surveys that had been released to garner support and feedback on open space and parks, on the local hazard mitigation plan, on the ACAP, and then in the ACAP was adopted this time last year. As you're aware, this past year has been focused on the land use plan and map and working on the housing element related to that with several meetings at the Planning Commission, City Council. But the most recent GPAC meeting was held on November 30th. And they discussed the open space and conservation element, focusing on the goals and policies. And they continued that particular meeting so they could work their way through the rest of the goals and policies. And that's continued to January 5th, so we kind of call those GPAC 23A and 23B because it's still on the same topic. And the remaining work that the GPAC will be working on is completion of the draft open space and conservation element, the land use element goals and policies, and the completion and review of the safety and noise element, which is actually going to be more through the Public Safety Committee, but the final element will be before the GPAC. The agenda packet had the remaining meeting schedule where the GPAC work is expected to wrap up by this coming summer. And the remaining budget in the contract is expected to cover the remaining work to be done to bring the general plan to council adoption. Also included in your packet, they have the resolution establishing the GPAC with the provisions for the removal of members of the GPAC. We did get updated information from the city clerk on the excused absences and attendance. And that was provided as a blue folder item. And the initial appointment information was also in the agenda packet, so you could see who is appointed by which city council member if you are looking at any replacements. And per the resolution, the provision for removal of a member of the GPAC, a member of the committee shall be removed for missing 3 meetings of the committee unless the permission of the city council expressed in its official minutes, or if he or she ceases to be a resident of Redondo Beach. A replacement may be appointed by the mayor in his discretion, subject to the city council confirmation. If the removed member was the representative of one of the council members, then that the council member may nominate another representative to the committee. The council member may not nominate the same individual who was previously removed. So that's what's currently in the resolution regarding that. Let me see if I, again, my Adobe kind of closed everything out on me. I'm going to see if I have that. Pull up that blue folder item for the my apologies. The blue folder item for N3. Maybe. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and share this just so you can see the list. It might be a little bit small, but if you need to pull up your if you need to pull up the actual blue folder item, it was the N3 blue folder item. As you can see, there are 4 of the GPAC members who are no longer residents. So those are vacant seats. A lot of the different absences were excused. You can see if they were absent and it wasn't excused, those are the red points in there. So it's up to you as a city council if you want to make amendments to if there are other reasons that you want to remove a GPAC member, but that, just so you know that there were 4 particular members that are no longer residents of the city. I'll stop sharing. That's basically it. It's really up to your discussion if you have any direction for us to change how a GPAC member is removed. That would require an amendment to the resolution that would need to come back for city council.
And one other point, Brandy, that I think is worth noting, Mayor and Council, is that if you're contemplating adding members at this point in time, we would maybe caution against that. The committee has worked for so long and has worked quite hard introducing and initiating new members at the tail end of the process. I think it could be difficult. I mean, I think it's not impossible. If that's ultimately what you want to see happen to round out the committee, we can certainly do that. But we're at the very tail end, I think. And
yeah, I think the orientation to bring them up to speed on what's been discussed, and and bear in mind that a lot of these meetings were not recorded, so they're going to be reading the minutes, but maybe not getting the nuances of what the discussions were on the different topics.
When is this process going to be wrapped up?
The GPAC's process is expected to be completed summer of this next year in 2022.
And the recommendations go to the planning commission and then the city council?
Right.
And then the changes, aren't they, folded into our certified housing element and our EIR, and then ultimately a vote?
The EIR is part of this process, so that'll be completed. That's going to be worked on concurrently while the GPAC is working on the goals and policies. And
Well, then let me ask that question, Brandon. When do you think the EIR will be done?
We had a timeline in the agenda packet. So let me pull that up real quick. The timeline. So we've got the expectation is that the GPAC will finish up their work summer of 2022. The environmental review will be spring and summer 2022. So it'll be wrapped up around the same time that the GPAC is complete. We'll have a community meeting, that final community meeting in the fall of 2022. And then it'll come to Planning Commission, City Council, end of 2022, maybe January 2023.
But don't we want to have a vote though?
Yeah, then it goes to a vote. So you have to.
You're going to have the ballot language and everything settled. Well, Eleanor can tell you really by December 2022.
Earlier. That is correct. If you're going to do our general municipal election in 2023, the first week of December is when we have to have that measure in. So.
There you go. Work back from that, Brandy. Otherwise, you push out 2 years because or I don't know. Would you have to wait another 2 years, Eleanor?
I'd have to look, but
we wouldn't be able
election.
to. We would have to have a special election.
Because
you can't, I don't think you can do that.
I know.
I don't think you can. That's
I don't
not.
think you can just go.
I mean, you could do it with. I'd have to look, but the June or November election.
Yeah, that's an important question.
That's what I'm talking about. Not an actual. It's a
very
special
important question to get answered. Okay.
Isn't any election outside of our normal election considered a special election?
Yeah, it's considered a special election, but the charters can be. It's not a charter, right? It's not a charter. So I'd have to check to see if you can put it on June or November election, or actually, it would in 2024. It would be 2024.
A year later, over a year.
Unless you have something mid 2023 or November 2023.
Yeah. Well, right now, I don't know if they have one right now. It would be March in 2024.
So anyway, Brandy, I don't know if it can get done by then. That's what I was getting at.
I hear you.
Okay. All right. You guys need to work on that. Okay. Councilmember Nairn.
Thank you, Mayor Grant. So I'd like to update a couple of things here. I'd like to do the same thing that we did for the regular commissioners and put them all in the same bucket. Couple of things. One is, let's see, the section that we added 2-9.109 removal of members. The members of each board and commission may be removed from office by a majority vote of all members of the council. I'd like to add that to the whereas section, and then change the appointment, since we're such a different commission or council, change the reappointment or the addition of new members to the way we have the same as the commission members as a whole. And section B, the members of each board and commission shall be appointed by the mayor, subject to confirmation by the city council. I think it's important that we have consistency among the commissions. And now we got this going. We said we were going to be done with this. Brandy, when did you say this was originally supposed to be done? A couple of years ago? A year ago? 2 years ago?
Yeah. And I know, a big change of that was the SB 330 and the RENA numbers and having to make major adjustments, and COVID. I mean,
right.
That like having to meet with 27 members, even at the 23 members that we have now, that's it's the COVID really like impacted, as well as the RENA and the SB 330
right
revisions we had to make.
right? And I could see us, I mean, we're clearly not going to get this done by end of November, a year from now, exactly just under a year from now. So I could see a couple of more meetings, being 1 or 2 meetings being added to update some items. And I also want to appoint some new members on here. And I realize you guys don't necessarily want to, but I think it's important that we have a healthy crop of community members who are a part of this, who are putting their points of view in here, because this is the first whack at getting community voices into the future of Redondo. So for me, it's really important that we have those community voices, and we don't have community voices on here, on the commission, that have conflicts of interest. And I see an e-comment on here. I'll let it be read out loud first before I speak to it, but I'll be speaking to that, and I'll be asking questions on that one, amongst some others on here that we have since found out have clearly some conflicts of interest. So those are my comments for now. I'll let to hear some public comments and see what others feel about it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Councilmember MD.
You know, the main point of why we created this committee to begin with was to address density and housing. That was the biggest issue of why we did this whole general plan update. Now, they worked hard on that. They got to a consensus. They worked together to make that happen. And then SB 30 happened, and a lot of other things changed what they wanted to do. And many members have been quoted to say they're not going to support this general plan in the vote because of these changes that they had to do. But that housing part of it's already done. And so the rest of the 5 isn't going to there's no reason to change anybody out for the rest of the part of the general plan, except for vindictiveness. And it's not okay that you do this. And you've heard to put new people in at this juncture is extremely difficult. And it's not equated to in a commission because it's not an ongoing process. It has a start date and an end date, and this should have been completed a long time ago. And the purpose of general plan needed an update to begin with, but the main driver of doing this was the housing element. That was the main driver of this general plan, and the open space was important as well. But but you get my point. Those were the bigger drivers of this whole process. And so to kick people off at this point, to not let them see this get completed is completely ridiculous. There's openings. If you guys want to add some more people, I guess you can, but there's plenty of openings. There's no reason to be kicking people off just because you don't agree with them. Thank you.
Councilmember Lawrence.
Brandy, I may have missed it, how many actual meetings we're going to have between now and the summer?
There will be 5.
Okay. Listen, guys, I understand how you feel about maybe some people don't deserve to be on this or whatever reason. I think at this stage, we're near the end. I don't see any reason to allow this at this stage. This is an advisory committee anyway. It's not like it's the planning commission or a harbor commission that actually has some real teeth to it. This is an advisory committee. So, this thing keeps dragging on, and I'm afraid that if we allow this to happen, we appoint new members, this is going to continue on, and it's going to cost us more money. It's going to delay things. I totally understood for planning because some of the people were going against exactly what voters voted for, but we haven't gotten to that stage yet on this. And, I don't know, with 5 meetings, it's going to take somebody 5 meetings just to get their feet anchored onto this. So I'm not necessarily for this. I just think at this stage, let's just wrap this thing up. So.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, I'm with Councilmember Lowenstein and MD. Let them finish. Let's get this done. It's disappointing that it's taken as long as it has. It's disappointing that the state has gotten in our way and mucked things up. Let's just finish it. And, Brandy, if to the mayor's point, there is a possibility of timelining backwards from late fall, get it on the March 2023 election and let's be done.
Okay. I don't see any more hands up. I'll just chime in. Happy to, we need to wrap this up and we need to get it done in time for that election. Whether people want to add or not, it doesn't sound like there's a motion there. But I'll say you should definitely get rid of Chris Boise. I mean, he was asked to resign. I think it was 4-1. Guy engaged in a lawsuit on behalf of a developer against myself, Councilmember Nierenheim. And in court, after 17 months of litigation, he didn't say he knew, he didn't know who was paying for the litigation. I mean, come on. We don't need somebody like that representing the public. He should have left a long time ago. Still going on. Yeah, the lawsuit's going to the state Supreme Court. How do you like that? And he's sitting on our GPAC. So, but I don't know. We need to wrap this up. That's the main thing. And we've got to get this done in time for the next election in 2023. Or if you, Eleanor, have some other way to get on some other elections shortly after that, but we can't go much longer after that anyway. So, but I'm not so sure we could even do that. Anyway, any public comments?
So I have an e-comment. Vicki, would you like to read that? I see none under Zoom at this point. Go ahead, Vicki.
Yes, submitted by Mark Nelson. Nick Biro needs to be removed from GPAC as he is now both a BCHD board selected and approved committee member and a no bid contract awardee from BCHD. BCHD has one of the largest commercial development proposals in the history of Redondo Beach under consideration. And having any interlocks between City of Redondo Beach employees, electeds, appointees, or public chartered groups such as GPAC and BCHD committees, staff, board, or contractors is inappropriate and biasing. Concludes the comments submitted for this item.
That's me. That's it, Mayor. Oh, wait a minute. I got Brad Waller. Go ahead, Brad.
Hello, and thank you. I will agree with what you guys were saying about let's get this wrapped up. As a committee member, if we need to have 2 meetings in a month, so be it. But my name is Brad Waller. I'm a 35-year resident of District 1 and an original member of the GPAC. I am happy to see you're considering modification to the rules for removal of committee members. I request that you add a morals clause that removes members of the committee who commit an act which might be reasonably considered to be immoral, deceptive, scandalous, or obscene, or to injure, tarnish, damage, or otherwise negatively affect the community and or the reputation and goodwill associated with the city. A morals clause is extremely important because members of the GPAC have already engaged in activities which would have instigated a morals clause review. For example, during the last city council campaign, member Jim Light accused me of child molestation in a public forum multiple times. Member Light responded to a Redondo Beach resident's post promoting my candidacy that used a picture of my 1967 Chevelle with, and I quote, "Nils is a totally cool lifeguard protecting our public safety who has proven himself a leader in protecting our quality of life. He is not the kind of guy who cruises around in a cool car trying to lure children in so he can molest them." And that statement would be true. My attorneys have advised me to pursue legal action for libel and defamation of character. As a then sitting school board member, officer of the 33rd District PTA, and as a child advocate, this was an incendiary post. I heard about this post from people far outside the Redondo Beach community who wanted to know what happened, were the police involved, etc. If much of my life did not revolve around minor children, this would still be awful. A morals clause will allow the city to address egregious behaviors appropriately and prevent future occurrences. Thank you for your time.
Wayne Craig.
While I may not agree entirely with Mr. Walder, I probably would at this point with a couple of comments that he made. Mr. Voisey, who not only lied to the public for the better part of 2 years, on a witness stand said one thing, and then within a few weeks submitted a statement that legal experts have said is perjury. He said he didn't know who was paying for the lawsuit, and suddenly he did after a miraculous lapse of memory or recall, perhaps. Another individual, Paul Moses, he's personally gone and attacked my family and made lies about my family, things that happened at meetings that they never occurred at on a regular basis. Now, my attorneys have said that I could certainly pursue stuff, but you know what? I always thought that perhaps we can move on. Just after the election, I thought that after we would have a disagreement, we could pull together as a committee and work forward. But frankly, you have people on the committee, on that commission who are very problematic. And I think Mr. Voisey, they at least have shown an example of the rest of the community that if you have a person who is a potential perjurer, at least as far as experts have said legally, that the city won't tolerate that and have a zero tolerance and pull them off. So, I know he's missed a lot of meetings. He probably hasn't had a lot of impact, but I think it was a clear message that if you're a liar and a potential perjurer, you know what? The city is not going to select you or put you on commissions or committees and support that kind of behavior. Thank you.
Okay, there's one more e-comment.
Submitted by Leslie Campeggi. The council can choose to ignore the recommendations of the GPAC. If current members have any kind of conflict, they can and should be removed. Thank you.
That's it here.
Okay. Is that it, Eleanor?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, is there any motion to do anything here? Councilmember Obaji?
My hand up, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Obaji.
All right, so first, for the speakers who spoke out, you should never discuss what your lawyers told you because that's a waiver of attorney-client privilege. I'm just going to give you my 2 cents there. But generally speaking, unlike Jim Light, Mr. Waller, Chris Voisey has actually been adjudged and he's had a judgment against him. And unlike myself, he hasn't paid the judgment. So he should not be on anything here, and nor should he be able to list that he was on the GPAC when he runs for mayor while he has a 6-figure judgment against him and has been called a shill by a judge. So I will make the motion to remove Mr. Voisey.
You can't, you have to add the verbiage first before we add.
Sorry. All right. Well,
you have 2 choices. You can change the verbiage, and I would. I'll ask to speak after you, but there are some downsides to that, and I think we can all see from the various comments that part of the concern that will arise. But for tonight, if you, as Brandy said, if you want to change it in the future, give direction, and we'll return with a resolution, which will change it however you want to change it. Alternatively, if you want to remove at your next meeting those who have 3 or more unexcused absences, you can do that pursuant to the rules, and you can remove them and then have them added. Of course, there are the concerns of whether they can get up to speed, but you can't remove anyone tonight because it's not agendized for that, and you'd have to change the rules if you wanted to do removal for other than having 3 unexcused absences.
all right. I make a motion to permit the removal of persons who have unpaid judgments in excess of $100,000 against them.
I'll second that, but can we do that? I thought he just said that we need.
I think
no. He's saying that return with Rezo next week.
Oh,
that would say you would add something that if someone has more than 100,000 in unpaid judgments, you can return
100,000 or more, actually.
100,000 or more.
Would we have to go investigate and see if anybody else has a judgment against him for $100,000?
Well, that's always the concern. That's why,
But this would just provide a grounds. It wouldn't say that mandatory, but that we can remove such a person.
So the only thing I would add, and I'm not expressing an opinion on, other than when we started this, it was based on, I forget the name, Bill, Mayor, it was Growth and Traffic.
Growth Management and Traffic Committee, GMTC. Yeah.
And the one thing that the mayor kept stressing over and over, and he was in the minority as a council person at the time, is that committee was able to, not commission, where it's able to come together despite their very different beliefs on going forward. And if you look at the way this is set up, it's completely different than a commission, because the mayor appoints the chair and other members, but the Growth and Traffic Committee had all sorts of, one representative from youth football, one representative from, a little league, one from all these different groups. And ultimately the council came together on, okay, can we just appoint 5 each and 3 have to be in our district? And so the risk of doing that is it could taint whatever comes forward. It can be seen as political.
It's not political. It's a matter of a person standing. They got an unpaid judgment for over $500,000, $500,000 that they haven't paid. And they seemingly did it on behalf of a corporation. I mean, I've never met the guy, don't care for the guy, don't care for his political beliefs. He can run all he wants. But ultimately, that's not an upstanding person who should represent our city in any capacity on any commission.
Well, it's clearly designed for one person.
It is, absolutely.
But
if you
I endorsed against that person for mayor. So it's not like, I'm speaking for him. I'm just speaking on, you could set up any number of criteria to remove certain people. And the whole point of this was try and get general consensus. So that's just my point. If you give direction as a majority, we'll return with a resolution next week with that language. But this is a different animal in terms of we want a consensus among people that often don't agree on land usage.
I appreciate that because I was not here and I don't know the history of it. With that said, I think that my language is better than, for example, a majority of council can remove a person, because then if a majority of council galvanize against a person, they still can't remove them, right? Just because of political reasons. This is identifying new criteria that would be only applicable to this person or one other judgment debtor. And so that these 2 people cannot come onto this commission and be part of the city leadership in this capacity. So that's my proposed language. If there's a second, there's a second. If there is a substitute, make a substitute. But that's the only way I see to get them off.
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to remind everyone that I thought it was unanimous that the city council voted to get a letter for Mr. Voici to step down. So this is just, he didn't. So this is just cleanup. And I have since 2019, before 2019, been arguing for and working for and fighting for to get the commission members updated. For instance, Sam Cartoonian, his last meeting was on 4/26/2018, and then he moved out of the city. And I brought that up multiple times. And again, my feelings are the same way. Right now, we should be having members, a fully staffed commission with new members when members fall off, to ensure that the recommendations that we get from the community are community-based and are wholesome. And having members who are shills of developers doesn't set a good tone moving forward for this city. I mean, we even had a planning commission member threaten the life of the mayor. So I would just like to fill these spots after remove, add this to the have to remove this, remove his spot, and then if I have 2 members here who in District 1 alone that are no longer there. So District 1's not being represented. So I want to make sure there's good representation from District 1. If other council members don't care, like clearly Council of District 3 doesn't care, well, that's fine. That's not my prerogative. But I want to make sure District 1 is well represented, has good members on the commission. So that's where I'm going with this. And I want to ensure a strong, healthy commission and representative District 1.
Mike Webb, did you have another comment?
That's a different motion, and that one actually would be permissible. It would be a motion to agendize removing all members who have missed 3 or more meetings unless excused. And the council, it's not you in District 1 or Councilman Horvath in District 3. And that doesn't, that's not as political or at least it doesn't strike me as political as removing 1 member. But that would be appropriate under the rules. And just like you accept resignation of an opinion because of a person who moves out of the city and accept their resignation, the resolution does say shall be removed, and that can be done by the council at the next meeting.
So
you're saying, Mike, that needs to be agendized in as well as what Councilmember Obaji was trying to do, which was his motion.
Correct. And I don't have an opinion on whether it's a wise thing to do at this point, but I have an opinion that that's perfectly permissible under the current rules.
Well, so he should, if he wants to do that, should he amend the motion of Councilmember Obaji? I mean, it's kind of just come back with do those.
I should have just said that, but I wanted to explain why they're different. But yeah, if that's what he wants to do, it's within this council's power to do so.
I don't feel like taking out Matt Kilroy. He's in District 5, and I don't feel like taking out the absentee aspect of it. They're already, Kieran Hashimi and Sam Kapani are out because they've moved and resigned, and one has passed away, and Jennifer Glad has moved and resigned. So if those, I believe Jennifer Glad is a District 4 member. So I want to update my District 1, make sure that we're well represented, and move on from there, and remove people who are clearly tainted and clearly making bad decisions on behalf of other people. So that's.
Well, look, we got a motion on the floor.
So, yeah,
to do that.
I would. Can I actually add to the motion to return, in addition to the items that Councilmember Baji said, to also return next week to add commission members and to add commission members as well.
Well, I think there were 2 amendments in there. One was to remove commission members, and the other one for attendance purposes. And then the other friendly amendment is to add commissioners.
I'd like to add two new members next week.
Well, you have to remove them first to have an opening, just like.
Are you talking about the replacement of the 4 vacancies? Because there are 4 vacancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, actually, there's only 1 member right now in District 1, I think. Yeah. So I'd like to add a new person for that spot next week.
So if you want to put the 4 vacant appointment of the 4 vacant people on there, and if I don't know if were appointed by the council person, then the council person can nominate a person for that spot.
It's nominating, and then the mayor actually does the appointment with the confirmation of council.
We do it in the same meeting?
Yeah, that's troublesome language because the council left it in there.
I'm going to reject the amendment anyways. And the reason why is because frankly, staff doesn't need to deal with orienting a new commissioner this late in the game. They got plenty on their plate. And Ms. Director Forbes has taken us through RENA and now SB9, enough is enough. Let's leave them alone. And they're right. Let the GPAC finish up their job.
No, well, it's okay. Well,
So as I understand, the motion is just for us to return with a reso that adds that language to include that as a reason why a person can be removed. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then any person that meets that will bring back an item at your first meeting in January to remove them if it passes.
Yes, please.
and that has a second. And sorry, Nils, he didn't accept your friendly amendment.
Got it.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji, your hand is up.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Webb's comment that it's political. It's not. We got to draw lines on what's representative of our city at some point. I'm sure you'd agree that we shouldn't allow convicted felons to be on our GPAC and other areas. And what for you is, let's say a felony is a violation of a criminal statute. For me, having an outstanding judgment as a civil litigator is just as significant as that. Like, you should either pay the judgment or declare bankruptcy. One of those two things should be happening. And neither of those is happening in this case. So that's where it, to me, says this person is not a good person and should not be representing our city.
So I should have phrased it differently. It will appear political to people
I get that.
on the up.
I appreciate that.
I shouldn't have said it's political. I said it will appear political. So I apologize for mis.
No, it's all good. No need for an apology. But cool. Thank you.
Thought everything was political nowadays.
It is. Everything we do up here is political.
Anyway. All right. Anything else? Any more comment from the public, Eleanor?
No, not on this item.
All right. It's a motion on the floor in a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
No.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
No.
Well, I won't be vetoing that. This
It's
council, I think, voted
vindictive, guys. That is just
unanimously
vindictive.
to ask. Yeah, well, I think you voted to ask him.
So it's
resign.
suing somebody.
You asked him to resign, Laura? I think you voted for that. So,
It's not worth it. This is not worth the fight at all. This is, you guys are, you're being vindictive and petty and, no.
I've got a $500,000 bill you could pay.
Having to defend a lawsuit filed by two residents for 6 months or a year and paying ridiculous amounts of attorney's fees.
The only thing I want to ask, and I
It's a long
don't know
story.
about this, the mayor said it was on appeal. Is that judgment on appeal? And if so,
who pays for it, I think, is on appeal. Yeah.
So a judgment I'll have to look at whether.
No, the judgment is standing and it is valid until it is reversed or stayed or some other thing.
But it's on appeal.
I just want to look at that.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I'm highlighting it so I don't come back next week.
Absolutely. No, that's your prerogative. That's what you got to do.
Just to Councilmember's MD's comment that it's petty. Mr.
That was the
Boise
wrong word. That was the
filed a
wrong word. I
lawsuit
apologize.
on behalf of the developer, claiming that we had violated the Political Reform Act and dragged it through 17 months of litigation into a trial. And the judge who heard Mr. Boise called him a shill for a sham lawsuit. And of course, he was represented by Redondo Beach Waterfront LLC, as testified by his attorney at the witness stand. They had to call his attorney to the witness stand to find out that Mr. Boise was in fact a shill for a sham lawsuit. And of course, they've got plenty of money. So they just appealed to the appeal court. 3 judges agreed that he is a shill for a sham lawsuit. That's 4 judges. And then they got into a fight about who's going to pay the well over $1 million judgment now in legal fees. So because that got immersed in the Political Reform Act, that's now before the state Supreme Court. So to call this petty is absurd, or vindictive is absurd, when we voted years ago to ask Mr. Boise to resign. And he ignored us, of course. Then he ran for mayor, claimed he was on the GPAC. So it soils this whole committee when you have someone like that going around saying, hey, look, I'm on the Redondo Beach GPAC. Aren't I great? When, our city stands for honesty, integrity, and transparency, not for hiding behind moneyed developers who can't take a loss. So that's all that happened. It ain't petty, and he does not belong to be on a city commission And thank you for Councilmember Obaji and Lowenstein and Narenheim for standing up for Redondo Beach, really. That's what this is about. And it's late in the game, no question about it. I wouldn't have cranked this up, but yeah, since it's before us, I certainly won't be vetoing it. And guess what? It's going to the state Supreme Court. And I don't think he's going to get out of it, but we'll see. All they're doing is challenging, all they're doing is challenging whether Redondo Beach Waterfront has to pay for it. It's very complicated. So anyway.
But I don't know. Look, I don't know anything. I don't know anything about your case. I don't know anything about what's going on. But I could have sworn there was something that came out that said that it was your guys' lawyer that wrote the shill and that the judge took it out. But I could be wrong. That's what I.
Oh yeah, you're wrong.
Completely wrong.
Why don't you go read the record?
Anything that you're
Why
talking
don't you do
about?
the homework on that? Why don't you do the homework on that, Laura?
I don't really care. I don't care about the homework on that.
You don't care, then don't say anything. Just be quiet.
This looks like this is vindictive.
No.
And I don't have to be quiet, Mills. I don't have to be quiet. This is all just vindictive. I think it's much worse that Jim White called an upstanding person in this community a child molester. I think that is much worse on that. And so there's no reason to be pulling out people because you don't like them, because you don't agree with them, because you think they're immoral, because they're any of those other things that you said. And that this case that you have is completely out of this whole thing. The point of this committee is so that you can put voices of everybody to get together, that maybe they'll come to a consensus. And that's what they've been doing despite of all of their disagreement. They've been coming to agreements, and that's the point of this committee. It's a committee. It's advisory. It's only advisory. It doesn't make any judgments.
We don't need a shill for a sham lawsuit by 4 judges sitting on our advisory committee. So anyway, the motion's made and passed.
I just want to check the issue with Nick Biro working for BCHD. Is that an issue, Mr. Webb? If that turns out to be true.
I believe that Ms. Park checked with Ms. Forbes and GPAC won't be working on the BCHD.
HCLD.
Okay.
So he did reach out before he did that, and Ms. Park checked with Ms. Forbes.
Yeah, and any discussion they have on Beach City's health district, he'll recuse himself from that conversation. No, it's not on that project. Anything, related to open space, things like that, he's choosing to recuse himself on that.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to check that, get that out in the open as the comment was made. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. And what was the point that was being made? That was not, it was not our attorney that called Mr. Voisin Schill for a sham lawsuit. It was the judge. But that was just something somebody floated, which you latched onto without doing your homework to find out that wasn't true. It was the judge that called Mr. Voisin Schill for a sham lawsuit. But you'll find something else to float out there and get people chewing on. Anyway, it's passed and we're moving on. And what's next on the agenda here is discussion and possible action regarding proposed changes to library meeting room use policies and procedures. Approval of the updated library meeting room use policies. Susan, welcome to the party.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At your meeting October 12th, Council directed staff to amend the library's meeting room policies regarding the lead time required to book a room and to clarify meeting room fees for nonprofit organizations and the organizations eligible for meeting room waivers. Specifically, the council asked that meeting room fees be waived for organizations in which an administrative or elected member of the city serves in an official capacity on the board or as a direct member, and secondarily for Redondo Beach-based 501c3 organizations on an approval basis as the budget allows. It should be noted that the master fee schedule would have to be amended to allow fee waivers for Redondo Beach-based 501c3 organizations, and direction would be needed regarding the approval process for group selection and implementation. The attached main library and North Branch meeting room policies have been revised so that the number of advanced days required to book the library meeting rooms have been reduced from 10 days to 3 business days. And that is when a setup is not requested, and the lead time has been reduced to 5 business days when a setup is requested, and that was to allow enough time for the public works staff to set up the meeting rooms. And the language in section E3 of both of the policies has been amended to clarify that not-for-profit reduced fees only apply to 501c3 organizations. And section E4 has been added to both policies to clarify the meeting room fee waivers. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I'm not seeing any hands up. Are there any public comment about this?
Okay, let's see. No Zoom and no e-comments.
Okay, Councilmember Naranat.
So this is the return of all the things that we worked on from the prior council meeting, correct? With no other additions and changes?
Correct.
Okay. Perfect. So we just need to do receive and file on this. Thank you very much for doing this. I'm glad we were able to update this and yeah, move forward. So I'll just make a motion to receive and file the report and implement the revised schedules and policies.
Do we need to approve the updated library meeting?
Approval here would be sought.
Okay. So then I'll revise that to say approve the changes to the meeting room policy and the fee schedule associated with the changes.
Yeah, and so no fee schedule change at this juncture. That has to come back later. So all you're doing tonight is approving the new meeting room use policies and procedures.
And because the 501c3s, that's not a change on the fee schedule.
You're clarifying the eligibility there.
Got it.
That one's good. Later, if we want to extend and broaden the fee waiver program, that will require a subsequent change to the fee waiver schedule. We'd have to do that at a subsequent date. So all of your direction from the last item is incorporated in these policies. The one exception to that is because the motion was sort of 2-part. If you want at some point budget contingent is how I believe you direct the referral, we could come back later and discuss a process by which you would waive the fees for not-for-profit, Redondo Beach not-for-profit groups in town. We'd have to do that later. But this would clarify exactly who's eligible for the reduced rate that's provided today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's it. And that's my motion. I don't think you need anything else.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Don't see any hands up. No public comment. I guess I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Naranat.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay. All right, city manager items. Thank you, Susan.
Great. Just a couple tonight, Mayor. First and foremost, we do have one more meeting next Tuesday, as I've mentioned. Want to start bringing to your attention, and we'll have this on the website and the like, but the 21st is the last day City Hall is open this calendar year. Our City Hall closure period will begin on Wednesday, the 22nd. City Hall will reopen on Monday, January 3rd. So we are dark for a while. Essential services will continue during that period, but City Hall business will cease over that holiday break. So just want to make that clear now. And then secondarily, a few of you, and I know at least one of you heard sirens earlier in the evening. That was for a 2-alarm fire on the 700 block of Broadway. Thankfully it was put out. No injuries have been reported, but we did have a fairly large response this evening to what appears to be a 1920s 2-story structure there on the 700 block. Again, it looks like we were able, us and other crews were able to put it out. But that's what the sirens were, if you were curious. So.
Yeah, it was a good friend of mine's house. I was getting texts.
Oh, that's too bad.
Very unfortunate. It's a beautiful old home. Couple of old classic homes there. It's a shame to see that happen. Okay. Councilmember Narenheim, did you have any items?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Brandy, the Riviera Village moving forward with the outdoor dining. You guys are talking to the Riviera bid and for the removal of the outdoor dining parklets that are not being used.
Yeah, Brandy's in transit, I think.
Okay, that's fine.
To the house.
So that Ted, probably more Ted's department actually.
Yeah, I can give you an update on where we're at with that. So we have initiated a request to the Coastal Commission for permanentization of the program based on the feedback that we received in consulting the bid. We did a couple of walkthroughs with the bid, talked about strategies that we would discuss with Coastal Commission staff. And of course, we've also requested formally, based on your direction, Council, the extension of the fee waiver program that's currently in place through March 31st. So that correspondence has gone to the commission, and we've requested formal conversations to begin based on your guidance as part of our last discussion on it. So as soon as we hear from them and we get some feedback as to what the new options look like for the permanent program, we'll bring that back to you. My intention was to provide for you at the end of this week a copy of that correspondence we shipped to them, just so you have it as an FYI.
Okay. And Ted and Public Works, thank you. I didn't say this earlier in the beginning of my meeting. Thank you very much for getting your crews out there to remove all those palm fronds. Catalina was a literal obstacle course. People were finally driving extremely slow because they couldn't drive fast. So thank you for getting that to happen. I saw those guys out there and I wanted to give them a shout out for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And they'll be out there tomorrow morning as well, because the wind did continue to kick up until the early hours of the night as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, two items. One is today I had a call from a constituent. She's 84, legally blind, not able to either take the bus. It's a really big problem with her taking the bus or the wave. And she mentioned to me that Hermosa has vouchers for taxis or Ubers. And I wanted to see if we could do the same thing by bringing this back and discussing it for certain cases of people.
Yeah, we'll look into that. It might be the old dial-a-ride program that you're eligible at a certain age for or with certain conditions. We'll look into that.
Okay, then we won't have to bring it in front of the council then. The second thing is I wanted to bring back the discussion about a storefront improvement project program for the International Boardwalk. But you mentioned it'd be mid-year. Is a better time to do it?
That's the right time because it's really it just takes on a slightly different form because we are the structural owner of the spaces, so our involvement is going to be different there, and I think we would want to give you some context on how that looks. So perhaps it's a response report to sort of describe that to you, and then decide if there's an interest in maybe allocating or appropriating some resources towards it.
ABR would be fine then. That's it. Yeah. That's it then. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Nothing.
Councilmember Obaji.
All right. Just a couple of things. I've mentioned this to our city manager. There on Inglewood, just south of Artesia Boulevard, commercial parking is allowed. And this is just one of the trucks, but actually if you turn the other way to the right, you see tons of trucks every single day, every single night. They even are parking big rigs here in a residential neighborhood on Inglewood and Rockefeller. And the neighbor is just fed up. This is what she sees out of her window. And the thing is, north of Artesia, you cannot park commercial vehicles. So I'd like to agendize at some point in the future. It's not an emergency rush, but I can't imagine it'll take too long, but a discussion about prohibiting commercial parking on Inglewood, south of Artesia Boulevard.
You mean
Is there a second on that?
You mean Inglewood, don't you?
To agendize it.
Sorry, yes, Inglewood, south of Artesia Boulevard.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Yep. Well,
Okay.
And like you said, you're okay with time frame, so we can weave that in and, in the early spring or, kind of late winter is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
And
is there any objection to that, or we need to do a vote? I don't think so. Okay, well,
and
we
the
can't
last
think,
thing,
I don't know, next month.
and last thing is if we could at some point also have a discussion, or I don't know if this is something we can just direct staff to do, but to update there's a maximum length of a conventional vehicle in our code. And cars are growing actually in their length. And so I have a resident who's going to retire, wants to buy a truck, is concerned that his new truck is going to not be within the legally permissible size for non-commercial vehicles. So if we could just maybe assess whether our statute is keeping up with the size of vehicles as far as the maximum size of a regular non-commercial vehicle.
You mean for street parking?
For street parking, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, we spent a lot of time on that, I recall, about how tall, how long. So, I mean, we basically have to revisit that ordinance to determine if you want to change it or not.
Yeah, we, in some instances, we skinnied the parking down to give us, the ability to add more and kind of, competitive space, but length and width, two different issues, and parking on street, there's reasons to look at both, but
and I'm not saying I want to increase it. I guess to the extent cars are changing and our ordinances are staying the same, maybe it's time to visit that. I don't know when the last time the discussion was, but
it's been a while now. It's probably been at least 10 years, I'm thinking.
Are you talking about Zane potentially changing the oversized vehicle ordinance? Am I understanding that?
No, it's just supposedly there's a maximum length to a vehicle that you can park on our streets.
This would be our parking standards. It would be, what are our parking standards for spaces in public right?
The resident concern is that they get a Ford F-150 that they're going to get tickets for it being too long. I mean, that's not the car, that's not the model, but it was a standard GM Ford, something like that, pickup truck they wanted to get, and they're concerned they're going to get tickets. So I just wonder if we need to check out how our ordinances are sizing up to the models of cars coming out these days.
I mean, what I recall is there is a length. We do have an oversized vehicle ordinance, and there is a length, there is a height, there is a width. And so it's there for a reason. And I guess if somebody's buying a car longer than the ordinance and they think it shouldn't be that long, I don't know. I'd suggest measuring the car and checking the ordinance.
Or get a different car, right?
Yeah, and then come back and try to change the ordinance. Go, hey, look, I got this big truck and it's really not an oversized vehicle, but I violate the code. So can you lengthen the length?
True. Maybe.
Sounds like it's a length thing, but
that's fine. Not hugely important.
As I recall, the length was pretty long. That'd have to be one long truck, as I recall.
I think we tie it to the state vehicle code. So I'll give you a call later this week and we can talk about it. You can still see if that's okay with you, Councilman Obaji.
Yeah. Thank you. You don't even need to do that. If you just direct me to the code section, I'll take a look at it and kind of inform the resident. It's probably better that we guide him towards getting a smaller car than changing the law to crowd up parking even more, right?
Yes.
He might need it. He might actually need it.
Right.
Maybe he'll have the new Ford F-150 Lightning, and he might have an electric long truck. So
right, exactly. All right, withdrawn.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Councilmember MD.
I just wanted to ask one thing. When's the parking study for the Artesia Boulevard and Aviation coming back?
To be, I think, here in the next couple of months. I know they're working on it.
Next couple of months. Okay.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
I appreciate that inquiry, Councilmember MD.
And also, I don't know if I missed it. If you guys said, I'm sure you guys all saw it. No, I don't know. But there's somebody the schools from Hermosa Beach had sent everybody a painting, and I thought it was so cute that they took the time to do this. And they gave everybody a please accept this gift of hope and solidarity from the students of Indivisible Arts, Hermosa Beach. And it says, there's more that unites us than divides us. They've never watched our council meetings, but anyways, but it was a nice thought and it's very appreciated. And I think it's great that they took the time to pass on peace and love in the world, especially this time of year. So thank you.
Well, there's more that unites this council than divides us. Geez, we voted on unanimous on everything except for that one item. And then it was 3-2. We voted unanimous on things all the time. Divisive issues doesn't mean we're not united. Anyway, I got to share my screen. I have something. Mayor Brand's going to share his screen. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Do we know where that is?
Didn't we talk about this before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where that is.
So anyway, actually last Memorial Day, this is like down Veterans Park, right down to our Veterans Memorial. This thing is dangerous. That whole, I don't even know, you might as well take the railing out. It's actually dangerous to have it there. It gives you the false sense that like if you grab it, it'll stop you from falling over. Because yeah, you should probably just remove it. I mean, it's an unsafe situation. So anyway, we've talked about it and hopefully we can get out there and fix it, Mike.
It is. We discussed it. Ted and I just discussed it in our monthly meeting a couple days ago. We are.
Oh, okay, great.
On it.
Yeah, because it's.
Now that picture gives me pause that we might have to do something more immediate. So we'll be looking at that tomorrow.
Yeah, I could share it again if you want, but you get the picture. You just go look at it. You go, yep, that's gotta, that's not going to stop anybody from falling over. Anyway,
no, hazard. Yeah.
Mayor, I just want to tell you about this great app that I've been spreading to residents called Access Redondo. And you can snap a picture and submit something like that, and Public Works gets it, they respond to it, they mark it reviewed, and I get on top of it.
Does that work better than being the mayor and bringing it up at a council meeting?
I don't know.
It actually does. Actually, does.
Yeah.
Access Redondo gets it done faster.
It does.
It really
does. It might.
And it may not expose to liability as the mayor going on.
I know.
I see an opinion that it's dangerous in a public meeting.
What?
Mike, I give it every opportunity. I don't know what else to do.
Oh, and I'm just saying, the Access app may work better for that purpose.
I don't think, okay.
But most importantly,
Redondo for legal review.
No.
Yep. No, seriously though, Bill, the reason why it works faster is because the Access Redondo takes it to the actual person who's going to do the work. As opposed to when we complain, it goes to city manager, to Ted, then it goes to someone else, So it actually goes faster.
Yeah. It might be too big of a project, but I get the point.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks, everybody. It is now just about 10. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Till next week.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Lowenstein, second by Councilmember Obaji. Any objections? All right. So ordered. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Good night.